Right, my friends. I just pressed the Let's Go Live button, so let's wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet. Before we go ahead and get started, we've got another big and eventful day that we need to attend to, but we can't get started until we can get started when the tubes are connected, and it looks like they are. So let's go ahead and do it, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live, the show that spotlights misconduct involving police, prosecutors, and politicians. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney. And today, we're talking about Judge Chutkan gagging Donald Trump. That's right. We know Judge Chutkan. She is the judge that is presiding over the January 6th prosecution brought by Special Counsel Jack Smith. And we've gone through all of these arguments many times here. We saw Trump's response to Jack Smith's official request for a gag order. And today was the big day when we had the hearing. And so the hearing took place, and guess what? Judge Chutkan granted the order. Now, we don't have a full order that has been released yet, and I expect that to be dropped probably tomorrow at some point. She said it was forthcoming. As you can see here, the actual final order is forthcoming. So a little bit of speculation on what it's actually going to entail. But the good news is we've got our friend Roger Parloff, who was there inside the courtroom for the 10 a.m. hearing. And so we're going to go through his Twitter thread, X thread. Sorry, Elon, don't ban me. And he's going to walk us through exactly what happened. And so we'll do a deep dive read on that before we come back and see what Donald Trump had to say about all this, because he has responded to it. So, you know, he's now going to be gagged. He's now going to be limited from what he can say about Jack Smith, about the judge, about, well, we think the judge, we think maybe his campaign might be gagged, right? This is a monumental deal. It's actually a kind of a horrific day because this is just one more indicia, one more indicator that the country is on the trajectory that we all feared, where the leading presidential candidate cannot even talk about the prosecution by his political opponent. So Trump responded to this, and the question that we're going to be asking, a theme of this, entire conversation for some time in the future, is going to be this tiptoeing, tap dancing around a minefield maneuver. Is Trump going to play this game? Or is he just going to continue to exercise his free speech? And the question for you is, what do you think he should do? You think he should just abide by the judge's orders? Because if he doesn't, well, she has the power to sanction him. And some of those sanctions might actually carry some weight, maybe hold him in contempt, maybe order him to be remanded into custody, right? Pretty big stuff. And then that could cause a real big constitutional catastrophe. Oh, well, that's kind of the reason why you don't do these prosecutions, but we'll save that when we get there. So we'll see what Trump said via his campaign. He also had a couple of statements. He's speaking, I think, in Iowa today. So we'll see what he had to say about this. MSNBC gave us their report. They were also in the courtroom, so we'll see what they say about it. Marjorie Taylor Green also popped out of the courtroom, and she gave us her take because she was there in person, and she got to see exactly what happened. And then our friend Shipwrecked Crew is over on the X, and on X, he put together a nice little summation of some possible routes up to the United States Supreme Court. So we'll check in with him and see what he says about that as well. And then lastly, provided that there's some time and we can get to it, there were a couple of other filings in the Trump case. It's actually a pretty quick segment, so we'll probably get to it. But we've got a notice of appearance. Trump has a new lawyer, Emil Bove from New York. We'll take a look at that, also from Blanche Law. And they've also gotten their security clearances, and they've submitted a motion requesting access to the classified filing or to the ex-parte filing that we didn't see. So last week, we spent some time talking about Jack Smith submitting motions to Judge Chutkan, but not copying Trump's defense on this. Anytime you submit a motion, you're like, hey, can we have a continuance? I'm going to be on vacation. You generally will copy the other side, just like a CC. Hey, I'm sending this message into the judge. But Jack Smith is doing a lot of this ex parte. He's doing this without copying the judge. Without copying Trump. The judge sees it, and they're saying it's classified, and it's national security and all this stuff. So Trump's defense is saying, we don't buy that for a minute. We want access to it. Give us access to it. We're entitled to it. And so they filed a motion for access to the CIPA filing, which is what we talked about last week. So as you can see, my friends, we've got a lot to get to today, and it's going to be some fun stuff. It's kind of depressing, I know, hearing that the country is still careening in towards this constitutional crisis. But things have to get a little worse sometimes before they get better. You know, it's always a lot of work until you get to the top of the mountain and you go, okay, well, that was worth the effort. So we're waking up a bunch of people. Every time they gag and limit Trump, I think more people realize what a joke, what an illegitimate garbage prosecution this whole thing is. So we'll get there. Now, I do want to say shout out and thank you to everybody who came over this weekend and came and supported us at Eric's House, the 2023 annual fundraiser. We had a great showing. We generated over $30,000 for ericshouse.org, which is an organization that is dedicated to helping people who've lost a loved one due to suicide, overdose, tragic death. Unfortunately, there's a lot of that going on. And so at the end of the show, I want to call some special shout outs to some of our amazing donos and everybody who supported us. But we had a big showing from the Watcher community. Show up in the chat and come and support us. And we're just grateful for everybody who made that day a success. And Eric's House does great work. And so if you know anybody who needs any support in that area, fundraiser is still going on. You can still make donations. I have decided to match. I told you we were going to do this, but we matched it yesterday on everybody that donated to our page. So if you made a donation to Eric's House, that dono is being matched, and Eric's House is getting something, I think, as a result of our page, something like $6,000+. So amazing, everybody. Thank you so much. It really goes directly to people who've lost somebody, and we're just very grateful for all of your help and support. It's our big annual fundraiser. And so shout out to ericshouse.org for that. Many of our members came and joined us over at Watching the Watchers. .locals.com to come and support us. We're grateful for everybody over there as well. Along with our YouTube members, we saw some very familiar faces, and so we're grateful for everybody. If you want to become a member, join us on our member-only streams on our Saturday shows. We've got some fun stuff cooking for our members. I'm really, really excited about it. Come check us out, watchingthewatchers.locals.com to join in on the fun. You can also sign up for our newsletter at robertgovea.com. You can get the daily reports on all the shows. You can see here if you miss something, we have it here. We have our Egyptian foreign agent Menendez. You can see here in that Sphinx outfit. That's a fun thumbnail. Shout out. All right, so we have that all cooking. robertgovea.com, and sign up for our daily newsletter over there. And we appreciate you doing that so that we never lose touch in case we need to. Now, a quick note on sponsors. So sponsors are going to be in flux a little bit. We've got some other deals in the works. And so we're changing out sponsors, and I'm very grateful for everybody who supports our sponsors. We've got, I think, three other ones in the queue that will start to slowly work into the live streams and some of the other content. You'll see those. Thank you for supporting our sponsors. Of course, they keep us busy here. They keep the show on the tracks. So shout out to our sponsors. Don't have anyone today for us, but you'll see more of that coming up very soon as we continue to work some of that out. But as always, we shout out our members. And quite frankly, I would prefer to emphasize our members rather than sponsors. I think that's a win-win for everybody. So I just want to say thank you to our members once again before we get into it. Now, you'll see some of that stuff coming up this week, and we'll get there when we get there. But without any further ado, my friends, I know a lot of housekeeping. Let's get right into it. Donald Trump gets a gag order from Judge Chutkan. She's presiding over the January 6th prosecution brought by Special Counsel Jack Smith. And we're still waiting for the details on the final order that is to be written. But we see from the court proceedings that she has made her decision. She says that the order is forthcoming, but here it's going to be delivered soon. Everybody was present at the proceeding. John Lauro, Todd Blanche, Molly Gaston, and Thomas Wyndham were all there. So we don't have any details from this minute entry, but the order will be forthcoming. But fortunately, we do have somebody who was there inside the courtroom who's going to be guiding us through what happened at the hearing. You remember him as Roger Parloff. He's done some other very good reporting on some other trials, like the Proud Boys trial. And he was there in the courtroom during the Trump gag order hearing today, bringing us details from inside. He's reporting. Roger Parloff at R. Parloff on the X. He says, bright and early this morning, I'm at E. Barrett Prettyman, U.S. Courthouse this morning, and we're going to be tweeting the hearing, United States of America versus Donald Trump. Now, he's done us a solid and given us a key excerpt of the gag order, of the protective order that Jack Smith is seeking. And remember, Jack Smith doesn't want Trump to get on Truth Social and say, this entire prosecution is illegitimate. And Jack Smith is an employee of the DOJ, which is Joe Biden's office, and they've been prosecuting me 4 times now. The special counsel, 2 cases Florida, and D.C., but many conversations about them guiding Big Fannie Willis's case out of Georgia, and a bunch of overlap with Alvin Bragg and some coordination with the DOJ and so on as they maneuver their cases around to prosecute Trump. So Trump, as not only a defendant, but as a presidential candidate, has multiple layers of free speech, right? Free speech to talk about his position as a defendant, but also free speech as a candidate to talk about how disgusting the Department of Justice and the DC Circuit has become. Don't you want to reform that as a political candidate? Shouldn't he be able to talk about weaponized political prosecutions, many of which we've covered here, that involve the Proud Boys, for example, going to prison for 18 years, or the Oath Keepers for 22 years? It's insane. So surely he should be allowed to comment on that. But no, Jack Smith wants his butt gagged, and sounds like he's going to get it. So here's the proposed order from Jack Smith. This is what he wants the judge to sign off on. Has not been signed off on yet, but we're going to be debating this throughout the hearing. He says that the parties in this case, Judge Chutkan should sign off on this, are prohibited, their attorneys too, Trump and his lawyers, are prohibited from making or authorizing statements to the media or in public settings, including on social media, that pose a substantial likelihood of material prejudice to the case, whatever that means. Such statements include, but are not limited to, statements regarding the identity, the testimony, the credibility. Okay, somebody's a garbage hack prosecutor or something like that would attack their credibility of prospective witnesses, or disparaging or inflammatory or intimidating statements about any party or witness or attorney or court personnel or potential jurors. So Jack Smith also wants his fee-fees protected because he's feeling a little bit sad. The defendant is also prohibited from causing surrogates to make such statements on his behalf. Okay, so Trump can't tell his other people to go out there and talk about this as a third party, which means we're just going to have to increase the volume here. Okay, we're going to have to just call this even more illegitimate, even harder. And we're going to have to call this a hack partisan political prosecution even louder, man. And I'm going to ask you to share it even harder and harder and harder so that everybody realizes what a joke this political prosecution actually is. Not only are they prosecuting their opponents, but now they're trying to gag them as well, and they're probably going to do it. So Parloff is there, and he's given us an update. Let's fast forward until we get the proceedings in action. He says, we're now in the media courtroom. Activity starts to bubble up. There are actually two media rooms. There are two screens, each in 4 quadrants. We've got the 4 quadrants on the screen. One's on the judge's bench. The other is different parts of the courtroom. The last is for exhibits. So 2 different angles of the courtroom. We got the judge and the overhead for the documents. At the defense table, we got the Trump defense team, John Lauro, Todd Blanche, Greg Singer, the new lawyer, Emil Bove, and one additional man who may be a paralegal or associate. So we've got 5 people there suited up, ready to go. Big issue, big case. It's the president. It's free speech. It's a criminal prosecution. Bove is the recent addition. We saw his notice of appearance filed. He's the former head of the National Security Unit of the Southern District of New York. Ooh, a pretty heavy hitter, they say. Now, we can't see the prosecution table at the moment, but there's probably going to see them soon. The lead on the motion so far has been Molly Gaston, the highlighter girl from the Department of Justice, and Thomas Wyndham, as we've seen before. We've got a lot of activity. Now, they're reporting over from Lawfare. And you can check them out at lawfare.substack.com for more. And of course, I really encourage you to support their work, and especially Roger's reporting. So what they say, the judge now comes out. It's 10 a.m. She's got her coffee. She comes out, door opens. All rise. Oh, put it down. Okay, sit down. Okay. All right, please be seated. Judge Chutkan comes out. All right. Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Okay, so what do we have first on the docket here today? I am looking at this order. All right, so Jack Smith is here. We're on the case of United States of America versus Donald Trump. Parties' appearances, please. Here, Your Honor, for the government. Here, Your Honor, for the defense. What do we have here? I'm looking at Mr. Molly Gaston from Jack Smith's office. I'm looking here at an order. It is apparently trying to restrict an out-of-court statement. It looks like you want to prohibit all parties from making or authorizing statements, including through social media. I'm reading it here for you. She says, but first, I want to discuss something that's even less controversial. Previously in this week, we talked about survey practices for juror members. Remember that? She points over to the government. And just to catch us up, last week, part of the original request from Jack Smith was that he doesn't want Trump to go out and do jury focus groups, right? You know, focus groups, you go, did you like that movie or not? Did you like how that candy bar tasted or not? Kind of those things. You can do that with jurors. Did you like this opening statement? Did you like when I called him this language? Did you like when I emphasized his relationship with his son or daughter or not? And so you can try out a bunch of different things. Jack Smith was trying to limit Trump's ability to do that. So Chutkan comes out, and she's maybe going to throw Trump a bone here before she gags him. She's going to say, well, we're going to, she says, I'm kind of skeptical that we need restrictions on these, like jury surveys. Like, how is that even necessary? And, this is what the government does, is they have a main attempt. They want Trump gagged, and they also don't want Trump to use, I don't know, pick something. I don't know, how about jury surveys? And so when the judge denies their request on the jury surveys, which they don't give a crap about, then she'll say, see how fair I was? Now you can go do jury surveys. And Trump's people are going to be like, okay, that's amazing. Thank you for that. We would prefer if we could, speak and not be gagged. So she's going to kind of, have a split motion, and it's going to feel like she's very fair and not. She's going to gag him on the free speech and then throw away this jury survey crap. So Molly comes out and she's like, well, Your Honor, we were concerned that questions in the study might actually prejudice the jury pool, which is the most asinine argument. That's how you know this argument is ridiculous. So, okay, Molly, you really think that Donald Trump is going to do so many jury surveys, right? He's going to just blanket all of Washington, D.C., that it's going to hit such a large percentage of the potential jury pool that it's going to impact and prejudice the jury pool. You see how insane that is? It's like, okay, so is Trump, how many jury focus groups would Trump do? 1,000? No, of course not. It's like 3. You do like 3 of them, right? Or you do like 1 a week, test them out. And let's try this. Let's try this. Let's try this. It's not like you're doing thousands of these to program all the DC jurors. But she's saying, well, we're concerned that the questions in the study might prejudice the jury pool. Like if we're getting a bunch of, surveys and polls going out. It's ridiculous. It's a throwaway argument. They all know it is. This is just performative right here. So the judge says, well, I think defense's proposals are sufficient for protection at the moment. So we're going to deny the government your limitation for those additional jury protections. And Molly's like, oh, shucks, Judge. Oh, you ruled against us. Man, this stinks. And it's obviously just, it's meaningless. Totally meaningless. So she says, now I'm not going to micromanage survey requirements. And the government didn't care about it anyways. So she says, all right, with that stupid thing out of the way, now let's get to the gag order. She says, so here, it sounds like Jack Smith, the government, Biden's prosecutors, it says your order is seeking to limit Trump from saying things. And it's the same statement we read previously. So no social media posts from Trump, nothing that goes after credibility of witnesses and so on. And the judge is saying, well, I have this question over whether Gentile, the SCOTUS case allowing limits on attorneys is limited to attorneys. She's saying, well, under this case law, does this only apply to lawyers or does this apply to lawyers and the defendants? I'm not sure here. She says, well, there's a bunch of things that this proposed order that it does not prohibit. So she's saying, I'm reading this now, kind of commenting about it generally. And she's saying that Trump's conditions of release, they already require him to abide by the laws, obviously, right? So every time they come out and they say Trump is threatening and intimidating, or he's doing something like that, they're just making that up, right? That's not he could be charged with threatening and intimidating. You can't just call up and threaten and harass people and encourage people to like eliminate other people, right? That type of stuff is not legal in most situations, if it's actually a crime. Trump posting that Jack Smith is a deranged thug is not that. But she's making this distinction here, right? Now, they say it is. They say, well, it's stochastic terrorism. It is incitement in the aggregate. Each one of Trump's statements alone by in and of itself is not enough. But when you aggregate all of his truths together and plus all of his supporters, then it turns into this real dangerous threat, and Jack Smith is now at risk. So she says, well, he's already got to abide by the law. He doesn't have to do anything differently. So one is 18 U.S. Code. She says it prohibits attempts to interfere with witnesses. Right? It's already illegal to do that. You can't interfere with witnesses. There it is. You can't intimidate. You can't harass. 18 U.S. Code 1512. Now, as she says, as long as the witness is foreseeable, if we know what the witness is and Trump is actively trying to influence him, then he can violate the law, right? He could actually break the law. This is accurate from the judge. And she cites a D.C. Circuit ruling for that. And she says it sounds like Trump hasn't broken the law right now. So she goes to Molly, right? And this is what judges do. This is the Socratic method. They start asking questions of both sides. So she sits up there and she knows what she's doing anyways. And she turns over to Molly Gaston, highlighter girl, who said the defense doesn't even need to read the 8 to 12 Washington monuments worth of discovery because she organized the government's so-called theory of the case for the defense. Very nice of her, which again, the defense never cares about at all. It's a ridiculous thing. But she says, so Molly, so how is what you're asking for different than the conditions we've already set? Sounds like we're already protected under the U.S. Code. She says, well, Your Honor, there are two sources of prejudice that the government seeks to prevent. First, things that are derogatory, that are inflammatory, and they're intimidating statements that are attacking witnesses, and some of those types of statements are not covered by the law. So the law says that you can't incite, or you can't intimidate or harass, but maybe there's derogatory language, there's inflammatory language, there's intimidating language that's not covered. She says, and those statements could still risk damage to the witnesses or other witnesses that see the attack. And she says, okay, so actual direct threats to people who are going to participate as witnesses, but also the trial of the case in public. The trial of the case in public. False renditions of evidence, attacks on witnesses' credibility. Those are things that we want to protect against. So if Trump comes out and he has a different interpretation of the statement, he can't communicate about that in the court of public opinion. Okay, they want to keep this whole thing isolated into the court of law, where it's their favored little coliseum. They have the whole thing rigged with their jurors and everybody involved. And if Trump can speak about this, well, according to the government prosecutor, he'll be afforded the opportunity to provide a false rendition of the evidence. We should just listen to them because they're so good and honest with us. And also attacks on witnesses and statements. And the judge says, well, what do you mean about this intimidating statements, quote? She says, Molly, set aside for a minute subjects of statements. How do you define disparaging and intimidating? And Molly says, well, I've got the dictionary right here, Your Honor. And she starts running through the dictionary. Disparaging is really offensive to government prosecutors, which is basically everything, by the way. So it's very, very thin-skinned, very low bar there. It's the combination of these things, especially when we're talking about Trump, okay? If Trump orders a turkey sandwich, illegal, death penalty. There could be a fair way to disparage somebody, she says. So it's a combination of these things. Some of these things are appropriate, some are not. And then the judge says, well, what do you mean, Molly? What do you mean fair? What does that mean? Asking the court to get involved in a variety of statements? You want me to police all the statements? Molly says, Your Honor, well, the standard here is this is limited to witnesses at this trial. Okay, now we have another question for ourselves. How broad is this order? Is it, because we don't know who the witnesses are. This is the January 6th case. They were investigating this for like 3 years, man. And they said this was the biggest, most extensive investigation, blah, blah, blah. There are over 1,000 defendants who've been charged. They say there's another 1,000 in the queue if they get to them all. We've got tons of government officials. And so Trump is supposed to just limit his speech to every possible prospective witness in this entire case, in this entire arena. He can't comment on Bill Barr, for example. He can't comment on Milley. Can he not comment on Nancy Pelosi, who is on the phone calls? Or anybody else who is involved? Is he just gagged from all of them? So let's see. She says, including statements intended to influence the trial. And so they're going to read Trump's mind now. Intended to influence the trial versus how about intended to respond to political corruption in the country, and he's running for president to solve that. Article in Washington Post by Trump's spokesman, they say his intent is to try the case in the court of public opinion. exactly what should not happen. Well, he's allowed to also communicate it in the court of public opinion. You guys can prosecute him in the court of law, and he should also be able to make his case in the court of public opinion. They're two parallel systems. And by the way, if the court of law is legitimate and trustworthy and people believe in its credibility, there will be no difference in opinion. The court of public opinion will mirror the court of law because the public opinion will mirror legitimacy. But they don't have legitimacy in the court of law, which is why they want to shut up the court of public opinion. So they say that this order is going to be narrowly tailored to accomplish that purpose. We're not wedded to these exact words, Your Honor. We know this is hard to gag your political opponents, but answer cannot be that defendant is permitted to intentionally try this case in the court of public opinion and influence the jury veneer, the pool. Well, he's not intending to do that, would be his argument. He's intending to run for president. You're deciding to prosecute him. And your criminal prosecution should not usurp all of the other interests in the country in having a fair election. So the judge says, well, what about if he's publicly praising a witness, Molly? So you said he can't disparage. What about the opposite? Well, she says that's what we're trying to get at in the paragraph 1A. You know, bolstering a witness is covered. And says, well, the order has a carve out for the judge to announce without more that the defendant denies the charges. That's it? Molly says, it would allow the defendant to campaign. He could say, no, I didn't do the crimes and I acted appropriately. So they're saying Trump can deny the charges, right? According to your order. And that's it. That's all he can do. That's all he can say. Like, that's it. He can just go on TV and say, I deny the charges. I deny the charges. But he can't talk about anything else. Well, it would allow him to campaign if he has that. So he could say, no, I didn't do the crimes and I acted appropriately. And she says, okay, so you're envisioning a different situation than currently exists. Is that right, Molly? Well, we're in a campaign. We're dealing with content-based political speech. Oh, so Trump's lawyer's now up. Molly says, he could say, no, I didn't do the crimes and I know I acted appropriately. Then she turns over to Trump's defense attorney. John Lauro's there. He stands up. Your Honor, I just want to say we're in a campaign right now, all right? We're dealing with content-based political speech. You're saying that he can't talk about certain content, not time or place or manner restrictions. You might say that you have free speech limitations. You see people protesting at certain locations, time, place, and manner. We've said, oh, that's okay. You can't have a bullhorn at 2 a.m. at City Hall, but you can have a bullhorn at 2 p.m. at City Hall on Friday night or Saturday morning or whatever. But you can't limit what they say at City Hall. Say you can protest abortion, but you can't protest Iran, whatever. Here, it is exactly that. Trump cannot say certain things about certain people in the middle of a campaign. They say the Biden administration, Trump's lawyer, Your Honor, is trying to silence his primary opponent in the middle of an election. And Chutkan says, well, let me stop you right there, John. Mr. Trump is a criminal defendant, and he's subject to the same rules as everyone else. And he says, everyone's here, everyone's complying with the rules, Your Honor. The judge says, oh yeah, skeptical. Everyone's complying? John says, here's what the prosecutors want. They want to prevent President Trump from speaking out on the issues of the day. The role of prosecutors, Your Honor, the appointment of judges, they all have political implications, and we have to talk about that. She said, well, hold off on a minute here. I want to make sure that so she's talking to John Chutkan. I want to make sure I'm clear on this recurrent theme here. All right. The fact is, he's running for president. It entitles him to make statements that are otherwise unlawful. He can make threats. Is that what she says? And obviously, do you see where she goes? She just jumped the shark on this thing, man. Threats. Nobody's claimed that he's made threats. In fact, the government hasn't even claimed that he's made threats. The government themselves acknowledged that if Trump made threats, it would have been brought under the U.S. code as a criminal code violation. It wasn't. So the order is made to prevent the things that are not threats. But then the judge says he can make threats. Trump's defense says, of course not, Your Honor. And he hasn't made threats. Well, Mr. Lauro, Trump has restraints on his speech, obviously. Do you disagree that those override his First Amendment rights in his campaign? He's subject to the conditions of his release. And John says, Your Honor, what we object to is the Biden administration attempting to censor his political opponent. Mr. Trump is entitled to speak truth to oppression. And he's entitled to criticize these prosecutors. And here we have a situation where the Biden administration, and she says, hey, look, John, I know you have a message you want to get out, but I don't want to hear any campaign rhetoric in my courtroom here. He says, campaign rhetoric? It's not campaign rhetoric, Your Honor. These prosecutors in this courtroom decided to bring this case in the middle of a campaign. They started it. They chose to have it inextricably intertwined with a political campaign. Trump, in the middle of that campaign, is here and entitled to say that these proceedings are unfair, and he's abided by your orders this entire time. And the judge, well, hang on a minute. I'm going to take issue with that statement right now. And Lauro continues, Your Honor, prosecutors haven't presented any evidence of a jury being tainted. Not at all. Not even one bit. So the easiest thing to do, if they're really concerned about that, with the jury being tainted, is putting this trial off until after the election. It wouldn't have to rush to judgment. We could put this whole thing past, and then we would know there's no harm to the jury. That's the way to deal with it, Your Honor. The judge says, absolutely not, okay? This trial is not going to yield to the election cycle. Very adamantly expressed. You hear me, John? This trial will not yield to the election cycle. Nah! Now, Molly, says the judge, now I want to ask you how this would work if I'm going to grant your order. All right, say I enter this order, which I'm about to, and Mr. Trump violates a restriction. What happens next? Revocation of supervised release, home detention, contempt of court? Do you want, this is literally asking Molly, what do you want? You want to jail him? How does it work? And Molly, the highlighter girl who says Trump doesn't even need to read the discovery and is not entitled to, says, Your Honor, all of the options you mentioned as she's salivating, just dripping with glee, all of the options you mentioned are available to the court. You can put him on supervised home detention. You can hold him in contempt. You could throw him in jail and revoke his release conditions if you want. You could admonish him. You could pursue financial penalties. You could, like in the Stone case, modify his conditions of release. Make him check in with somebody. Make him give up his passport. Confine him to his local state. Put him on home detention. Whatever you want to do, Judge, you're allowed to do it. She says, well, I know that, but what about the procedural posture, right? If Trump goes on True Social, and man, this is going to be something that we tap dance around this entire election, unless Trump just decides to start throwing elbows, political elbows, just dropping on truth. Boom, 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 and see what Judge Chutkan does. And I almost want to see that. You know, I don't encourage anybody to ever violate a court order, but what we have here is the judge violating the free speech order of the First Amendment. And so now Trump has to gauge what to do about this. Now, his free speech rights are directly opposed to the process that you would expect to have in a criminal court. But this is not any ordinary criminal court, and this is not any ordinary criminal case. So if Trump drops a truth off, what are you going to do about it? Molly, what do you want me to do about it? Throw him in prison? What's the procedural posture? Do you want me to issue an order to show cause? The order to show cause, the judge is asking, do you want me to set a hearing so that we can come in here and argue about the specific statement? Or do you want me sua sponte on my own? Do you want the court to just find a violation? To just, Judge Chutkan sitting at home doing whatever, and she gets a truth notification pops up. Jack Smith is a deranged freak, signed Donald Trump. Oh, Trump's going to prison. Do we need a hearing on it, or do I just throw him in the gulags? Molly says, well, any of those, Your Honor. But that's a hypothetical. So I suggest we first get in place an order. So the government is telling the judge suggestions. Well, Your Honor, and it's just amazing. The judge should say, yeah, I know it's a hypothetical. That's why I asked it, because it's probably going to happen, and I need to figure out what to do about it. So then the judge doesn't ask that, of course. She knows where she's going. She turns it back over to Trump's defense. Says, Mr. Lauro, assumed I issued an order, what would be the proper procedural posture for a violation? He says, Your Honor, it's asymmetrical, all right? It doesn't bar Joe Biden from making any statements, and she says Joe Biden's not before this court. So how to enforce this? It's impossible. It's unfathomable. say he wants to criticize Vice President Mike Pence, who's running against him in this current campaign. Say he says something disparaging against Mike Pence in violation of what the government says he's not allowed to do. The judge says, well, were there an order? What's the procedural posture governing the enforcement? All right, which is just wild, because she asked the government a hypothetical. Just to be clear about it, you can see this very well in the transcript, the double standards that exist. Hey, Molly, what's the posture if Trump violates it? She says, I don't know, it's a hypothetical. So let's just get it done, because she knows it's going to happen, and then she doesn't have to, she just wants to get it through because it's going to be the rule that serves her side. Then the judge turns around and asks Trump to say what they would do if there's a violation. Lauro says, Your Honor, impossible. What's the posture governing enforcement? What do you think we should do? He says, impossible. I can't even conceive it. Obviously, we'd appeal it, but it's ridiculous to think of an order preventing a candidate from speaking out on these issues. No limits to the kind of order being suggested. It's just broad. You just can't criticize people. It's not narrowly tailored. It's vague. It's overbroad. You can't come up with a better template for violating the First Amendment than government prosecutors have come up here. There have been no threats, nothing at all that amounts to intimidation. And what you've put in place, Your Honor, right now is working, frankly. It's working right now. The judge laughs out loud. She goes, yeah, right. It's working. Politics, she says, it stops at the courthouse door. She laughs at him. It's not working, right? She's cackling, probably like Kamala. Lauro says, Your Honor, the other thing, the harm being suggested by the prosecution or by the Biden administration here, it's completely speculative. Okay, there's no data about any of this. They're saying jury's going to be, biased or whatever. No data. It's all just them making it up. And she said, well, the government did file redacted info from people who attested to what happened to them. And there was another filing. And she says, that's not sufficient. And John says, no, of course not, Your Honor. All those documents predated this case. And Trump's not responsible for what some crazy third party does. So you can't blame Trump for that and gag him as a result. The judge says, well, my concern is the jury pool. The Biden administration and the DOJ and special counsel staff and judges staff and political witnesses. That's who I'm concerned about. Not Trump and his free speech, or all of the American citizens in this country who want to vote for him and want to hear from him. And he's not going to be able to talk about what I consider to be the biggest issue of our time, which is a wrecked judicial system. There is no law. There is no free speech if there's no justice system, no functional justice system, because everybody just dumps all over your rights. Biden comes in, student loans, write those off, right? It's total madness, total disorder if there is no law and order. And everything that they're doing now is to wreck the institution. And they're doing it because they're freaked out about Donald Trump. And they're blaming him now for third-party actions. So now they discuss this Trump statement. So they say, well, let's pull up some examples, the judge says, right? She's probably got all these clipped. She says, well, what about this statement, Mr. Lauro? Trump posted, no way I can get a fair trial, or even close to a fair trial in D.C. There are many reasons for this, but just one is that I'm calling for a federal takeover of this filthy and crime-ridden embarrassment to our nation. Where murders have just shattered the all-time record, other violent crimes have never been worse, and tourists have fled the federal takeover. It's very unpopular with potential area jurors, but necessary for the greatness and for all the world to see. So the judge says, well, John, calling D.C. a filthy, crime-ridden embarrassment disparages the jury pool. Now, let's assume that these statements have affected the jury pool. Why can't these issues be addressed through jury selection, Molly? And remember, back during many trials we've covered here, they always ask the jurors. For example, in the Trump trials, they just allow the jurors on. They always ask the question, do you hate Donald Trump? Yes, I hate his guts. Oh, that's perfect. So you'll be a great juror for our case because it's against Donald Trump, so we love you. But just to make sure that that's not a problem for the transcripts, can you set aside your absolute hatred for Trump and be a fair and impartial juror in this case? Can you? Yes. Yes, I can do that. Perfect. Come on in. So she says, Why can't this be addressed through careful jury selection? So if the jury is impacted, you ask about it and say, can you set that aside? The judge says, Mr. Lauro, do you disagree that Mr. Trump's statements could be disparaging, understood as disparaging to D.C.? He says, Your Honor, Trump is disparaging the Biden administration. But that's not what he said. He called the district, that's my district, a filthy, crime-ridden embarrassment. John says, I served in D.C. The judge says, before it was a filthy, crime-ridden embarrassment? They all laugh. Your Honor, look, Mr. Trump is entitled to speak out. Okay, he's entitled to draw attention to deep problems in this city that need to be addressed, but that have not been addressed by Biden. And plus, these statements, if they had any effect, jurors would likely be biased against Trump, not for him. And isn't that the problem with censorship? The judge says, Lauro, you keep saying censorship, okay? No question that the court is entitled to impose limits on defendants' speech. So she doesn't like being called a censor, which is perfect for the thumbnail that we created today. Says, we're talking about restrictions to ensure a fair trial. And he says, I'm sorry you don't like the word, Your Honor. It is censorship. Would you rather I call it a gag order? It's speech during a political campaign that you say that I can't talk about. And she says, well, if I enter the order, he can say that Biden has neglected the city, right? That's different from saying it's filthy and a crime-ridden embarrassment. So Trump can't call D.C. a filthy, crime-ridden embarrassment because it offends the judge. So now we're going to have a judge directed the words a candidate can use, says Trump's defense. So you're going to tell our client what he's allowed to say now? She says, well, it's not a difficult or impossible task for me to do that or for him to talk that way. So you're saying, Judge, that a candidate cannot say D.C. is a crime-ridden, infested rat hole, even though we know that's true? Everyone in the city knows it's true. It's what's happened in recent years. Molly says, Your Honor, what Lauro is saying is that Trump is above the law, not subject to the rules of this court like any other defendant. Oh, gosh. Everybody can picture this, right? Everybody knows this student that you had in grade school who stood up and talked like this, So she's in the process of gagging Trump, and they literally can't even talk about what a dumpster fire DC is. And Molly, Your Honor, he's saying that Trump's above the law. Now, he says the defendant can't campaign, but that's just not true. This order would prevent him from using the campaign to broadcast improper statements about this case. And the post you just quoted was attacking the jury pool in this case. It explicitly says it's about this trial. Chutkan says, calm down, Molly. I know that I'm going to vote for you anyways, but I want to get through all the 5 categories. So let me ask you about the other statements that the Biden administration and the DOJ are involved in, that we have some concerns about. She says that Mr. Trump repeatedly, she's pulling up another statement, and they're talking about what Trump's allowed to say or not. Unbelievable. Says in this statement, Mr. Trump, this is the judge speaking, repeatedly refers to president as crooked Joe Biden and the Department of Injustice, which they don't like. But wouldn't that be casting a broad net? How would name calling affect the administration of justice? How would Trump saying Department of Injustice affect us? And they really hate this, okay? They really think like these people, they love this institution so much they can't imagine that they're on like the bad team and all of this. They think everything they do is justice by virtue of the fact that they work in a building called the Department of Justice. But that's really the depth of their understanding of justice or what they're actually working to under the United States Constitution. And so when you call them names like this, they can't take it, man. They can't take it. It's like cognitive dissonance. Because they wake up every day and they look at their badge and they're like, I'm doing justice. You're like, oh, really? By prosecuting people that the FBI set up? Congratulations. So they say, wouldn't that be casting a broad net? How would the name calling affect the administration of justice? Molly says, well, Your Honor, the first part here is criticizing Biden is an example of how this order doesn't restrict the order. She says, well, does crooked Joe Biden violate your order? Well, he says it every day. The judge says, so Molly, so does it violate it? Yes or no? No. What about if he says the Department of Injustice? Can he say that word, Molly? Hall monitor, Molly? it does present a concern that the juror will think that the DOJ is unjust. Do you hear this? Molly doesn't want you to call it the Department of Injustice because potential jurors will think it is unjust. Well, we're going to keep calling it that indefinitely here every stinking day on the show, indefinitely. So Molly continues. She says, our concern is not to defend ourselves or the court. It's a concern that jurors will come to jury selection and not be able to follow the court's instructions because of having read these things. These are Washington, D.C. jurors that are like 95% blue anyways, okay? They are coming to eliminate Trump as hard, as quickly as possible. She says that this case law stands for the principle that we just can't let these things happen up until the time of voir dire, which is jury selection. So she says, okay, Molly, so crooked Joe Biden is not a violation according to you, but Department of Injustice, if he tweets it, that would be illegal. So a presidential candidate who's running to control the Department of Justice can't comment on the department being currently bad, as being unjust. Says, well, he can criticize Biden to his heart's content, says Molly. She's not answering the question according to this transcript. Chutkan says, so Mr. Trump believes his prosecution is politically motivated, but how does that prejudice this proceeding? It seems close to his right to assert his innocence and to criticize the government's use of power, which they say that we can get close to doing that. Well, she says, well, if Trump has a problem with this prosecution, he can file a vindictive or a selective prosecution motion that he wants to file. So he doesn't get to talk about it in the court of public opinion because he can file something in the court of law, which again is what they control in Washington, D.C. So he can complain about all of this directly to the judge, the same judge who refused to recuse herself, even though she has some very interesting history and some conflicts for working with other interesting law firms. So the judge says, well, but how does his criticism of the Biden and the DOJ factor in if I enter this order? Molly says, well, the Crooked Joe thing, okay, he's not a participant in this case, so he can definitely call his political opponent Crooked Joe Biden. Oh, good. Molly is allowing Trump to criticize his political opponent in America. Incredible. Well, what if Trump's defense says, Your Honor, well, what if Trump says something like, Crooked Joe Biden approved this prosecution, which I believe is a politically motivated witch hunt to interfere with the election. Can he say that? Molly says, oh, yes, Your Honor, that violates the order, okay? Falsely suggesting Biden directed this prosecution, which he did not. And I don't believe that for a minute, okay? That is a fact, not an evidence, Molly. I think we can prove that very differently. Joe Biden was upset as heck when Merrick Garland did not have the gas pedal pushed against Trump. This is outrageous, just to be clear with you. Okay, Trump should absolutely be able to say this. Absolutely. Because there's actual documented evidence about this, that Joe Biden, I think the Washington Post wrote about this, talking about Joe Biden being upset that Merrick Garland was not taking a more active involvement in going after Trump and the document specifically. So Joe Biden runs the DOJ. And Merrick Garland has appointed the special counsel, and Joe Biden appointed Merrick Garland, right? So the judge says, well, the problem is the argument to be made that the DOJ is under control of the executive branch, okay, that's true, like factually. It's part of a campaign, so that violates the gag order. So Trump literally can't talk about the Department of Justice, which is the entity that he wants to run soon. Well, she says, well, if we enter this order by the plain language of the order, it would violate that order because Joe Biden is not a party. It would not violate the order because Joe Biden is not a party, participant, or court personnel. It says, and John Lauro comes back out and says, Your Honor, they have to read their own papers before they respond to the court, right? Saying she doesn't even know what she's talking about, according to her own order. She says, what if Trump says Hunter Biden is allowed to sue witnesses and allowed to talk and I'm not? Can he say that? He says, Your Honor, we're just trying to struggle with the circumstances of what's being proposed here. I'm thinking George Orwell would have a field day with what we're hearing from these prosecutors here. That's John Lauro saying. And Judge scoffs that off, moves on. All right, now I want to move on to the third category. All right, so we still don't know what the details are on that. What can Trump say? What can Trump not say? The judge is just going through it. And it's just crazy to me that the government prosecutors are saying that a presidential candidate who's running to run the DOJ can't comment on a corrupt DOJ. So the judge moves on to the third category. Can Trump talk about deranged Jack Smith? Trump refers to him and his staff as thugs. Now, the judge says, oh gosh, I love Jack Smith. Now, these statements are troubling. At some point, it goes from permissible criticism to incitement of violence. She says this quote, will no one rid me of this meddlesome priest, comes to mind. Says public servants doing their job, not just derogatory language and labels, but highly charged language. So you can't call Jack Smith a thug because they're prosecuting you like mobsters. Will one rid me of this meddlesome priest, which is not what Trump said at all. He didn't say rid me of anything like that. But Jack Smith and the Democrat prosecutors, the people who have a bloodlust to throw J6ers in the gulags when they just look the other way at all of the other riots and protests, they are thugs, in my humble opinion. So the judge doesn't like that language. And the defense continues, says, Your Honor, I'm sorry that you don't like the language. Congressman Ford called his prosecutors racists, and the Sixth Circuit upheld that, okay? So you can say things like that about you when you want to. And by the way, my client, Donald Trump, is being bullied. I think he said Jack Smith is deranged. He made outrageous statements at the time of the indictment, linking Trump to violence. And so Trump was responding to that. And he is deranged if he thinks Trump is engaged in violence. John, in what kind of case is it appropriate for a criminal defendant to call a prosecutor a thug and to stay on the streets? And he says, well, whether it's the language I would use, says, I'm asking in a normal prosecution, would a defendant be allowed to call a prosecutor a thug? He says, this is not a normal case, which I absolutely agree with. And by the way, right, in a normal prosecution, I don't think a judge would allow it. But that's because in a normal prosecution, that person is not running to run the prosecutor's office, okay? But if they were, I think that would absolutely be allowed. Why? Because it's relevant to the actual prosecution. He says this is not a normal case. In fact, this is a prosecution unprecedented. It's using statutes in all sorts of crazy ways. It's trying to take Trump out of the political cycle. So asking for an order, not just affecting Trump, but also the public that wants to hear from Trump. This is the first time we've ever in America's 234 years had a sitting administration prosecute a political opponent. And the judge is like, oh, gosh, John, I've heard you say that, okay? You obviously have an audience other than me. Trump's listening. I want you to answer my question. Why do you need to use the word thug to describe someone doing their job that wouldn't be allowed with any other defendant? How is the word thug justified? Well, it's justified because it's free speech. She says it risks a real possibility of violence. He says it doesn't do that. What language do you use in a system that's now bordering on authoritarianism? What else do you call him? What is a citizen supposed to say when he's being denied due process? In President Trump's mind, that's what he's facing right now. And she says, well, he tweeted something last night, John. He's in Iowa today campaigning. And she says, hey, John, Mr. Lauro, let's tone this down a bit, okay? Stop screaming at me. Let me just wreck your client's constitutional rights in silence, all right? Stop getting so riled up. John Lauro says, Your Honor, it is toned down, right? As an advocate, I'm entitled to make my arguments on behalf of my client. But if you, Judge Chutkan, if you want to censor me too, the word Trump chose may not be the word you like, but he's entitled to make that statement under these circumstances. And he says, John, he's targeted Special Counsel Smith's family and his wife. He says, no, he didn't. It wasn't an attack on a family member. An indication might be political bias. By mentioning their spouse, says the judge? Well, he says it deals with political issues that relate to Smith. And says, so no order in place preventing him from saying this is politically biased. No order in place preventing him from saying this is politically biased prosecution by a politically biased prosecutor. So the judge says, what do you feel is appropriate for him to talk about a prosecutor's family and spouse? You're telling me it's appropriate and he should be allowed to talk about that? Yeah, he's entitled to, under the First Amendment, describe it. She says, what, in unfettered terms? He can even mention a prosecutor's family? He says, yes, Your Honor, it's part and parcel of the First Amendment. It's the part of the reality of being involved in a case of this nature. And Molly chimes in. Says, Your Honor, I think you identified right here why the government is asking for this. You nailed it. You hit it right on the head, she says. Great job. We paired disparaging with inflammatory together. They can't figure Trump out, right? They can't respond to him. They can't run a candidate against him. They can't indict him enough. They can't impeach him enough. They can't, Marco Rubio, small hands, big hands thing, and they can't figure him out. So now they're just saying, well, this speech, you got it's disparaging and inflammatory. Like, you see how twisting they are themselves into pretzels? When they're doing this, you know what's at stake here? The First Amendment. They are going through all of this new novel conversation because they cannot figure out how to shut him up. So they say we're comparing disparaging and inflammatory. What the defendant is doing is inflammatory. He understands the impact. They motivate others to threaten others. Trump says something and other people do something, so he's responsible. In this case, it threatens witnesses and it chills witnesses. And when he gave a Meet the Press interview, he said false things about one of the witnesses in this case. So when he was on cable news talking about this case, he was saying things that the government didn't like, so he should be silenced. And he also declined to answer certain things. And he declined to answer questions about his conduct. So he's able to control himself, but he's using his campaign to try this case in the court of public opinion, which, is there a prohibition against that when you're running for office? So the judge says, all right, well, now I want to turn to his statements about the court. I pulled this one up. The judge has her whole binder there. Says, I was deeply disturbed to learn that Mr. Trump made a post about another judge's clerk, and he even called her Chuck Schumer's girlfriend, said that she was running the case against me. John, Trump's defense, do you find this post acceptable? And this was posted back on August 8th. Says the Obama-appointed judge in the free speech indictment of me by my political opponent, crooked Joe Biden's Department of Injustice, shared professional ties at the law firm that worked for Burisma, based in Ukraine, of which Hunter Biden and his associate were proud members of the board and were paid millions of dollars, even though Hunter knew almost nothing about energy. How much was the law firm paid? So horrible. This is a classic conflict of interest gateway pundit saying the judge, the Obama-appointed judge, in the free speech indictment of me by Biden. So this is about Chutkan. Or this is about the judge in New York. I think it's about Chutkan. Let's continue. Let's see where this goes. So Lauro says, that is something I believe the judge in New York dealt with. Says, well, I'm not asking that. Well, says, I'd advise Mr. Trump to do that. Okay, so the judge, okay, so here's why we're a little bit confused. This statement was about the New York judge. This statement was about Chutkan. Okay, Trump is also being prosecuted by Letitia Tishy James out of New York in a civil case trying to take away his businesses. And in that case, the judge, Engeron, had somebody who was in his ear the whole trial, just, barking orders in his ear. And Trump called her out. This is a different truth about Judge Chutkan. So the response here is to the first situation in New York. Well, I'd advise Trump not to make comments about clerks. Well, would it be appropriate to do that? What I'd tell my client is not to do that. Well, why would you tell him not to do that? Because that's not how in the middle of a campaign, in the middle of a case. Well, he says, Your Honor, it was addressed by that judge. But yes, judges are subject to criticism, okay? So he can. It's well within the core of the First Amendment. So he was going to, you can see he was going to kind of agree that maybe he was crossing the line a little bit, but nope, he goes back to First Amendment. Nope, which is the right answer. First Amendment, he's allowed to do it. Because again, it's parallel. It's not appropriate maybe in a criminal courtroom or a criminal case, but he's also running for president and he's being prosecuted by his political opponents. Okay, that's why the First Amendment comes before due process in the Fifth or Sixth and right to counsel and these other things. It is first, man. It is first. And it's defended by the Second. It comes before everything else because that's how you expose the corruption. So here it was addressed by that judge and says, well, why shouldn't I then issue a similar order like Judge Engeron did in that case in New York, disparaging and obviously untrue remarks about court personnel even after he was on notice that the government was seeking the order in this case. And Lauro says, Your Honor, there's no need for an order. If Your Honor makes that admonition, he'll follow it, okay? He won't say anything bad about your staff. How about that? I will instruct my client along with what you suggested. The court dealt with it in New York. It's done in New York. It's not even an issue here. So you don't need to, on your own, just create a structure for an issue that's not even popped up yet. Said, you've had full control over this court, Judge. Trump's defense. Chutkan, you're doing a great job. Nothing's wrong here. New York was a little bit squirrely, but we're not there here. You've been able to issue orders that have been followed and obeyed. And the other cases are nothing like what's going on here. Your Honor is in great control here. Molly stands up. Oh, Judge, don't listen to John, okay? Lauro suggests nothing like what happened in New York has happened here, but that's not true. This case has been subject to this case. This court has been the subject of a criminal threat in relation to this case. I don't know, was that Trump's threat? Why didn't you charge him with a crime then? So we're happy to have Lauro admonish his client. That's great. You can talk to your client. But we also need an order. We need an order expressing on the record what the court order is, not what the expectation is. And the judge says, well, I'm going to think about all of it. So thanks for your arguments. Now here, I want to talk about this other case. What about these other posts about other witnesses? For example, this one. Judge pulls this one out of the binder. Says, wow, from Trump, posted this on Truth on August 5th. Wow, it's finally happened. Little Mike Pence, a man who was about to be ousted as governor of Indiana until I came along and made him VP, has gone to the dark side. I never told a newly emboldened, not based on his 2% poll numbers, Pence to put me above the Constitution or that Mike was, quote, too honest. He's delusional, and now he wants to show he's a tough guy. I once read a major magazine article on Mike. It said he was not a very good person. I was surprised, but the article was right. Sad! So they talk about this. Well, how about this one about Mark Milley? Trump posted this September 22nd, 2023, a recent one. Says Mark Milley, who led perhaps the most embarrassing moment in American history with his grossly incompetent implementation of the withdrawal from Afghanistan, costing many lives, leaving behind hundreds of American citizens, and handing over billions of dollars of the finest military equipment ever made, will be leaving the military next week. Witness, VP Pence witness, Milley witness. This will be a time for all citizens of the USA to celebrate. The guy turned out to be a woke train wreck who, if the fake news reporting is correct, was actually dealing with China to give them a heads up on the thinking of the President of the United States. This is an act so egregious that in times gone by, the punishment would have been elimination. A war between China and the United States could have been the result of this treasonous act to be continued. So the judge brings that one up. Now she brings up the other one about Brad Raffensperger, the Georgia Secretary of State. And she says, all right, well, now I want to start with the witnesses who are identified but who are public figures, saying, look, I take your point, all right? It's impossible, this is Chutkan, it's impossible for Trump not to criticize Pence, who's running. But none of the other people fit this description. So what about the other people who are not running? Well, Lauro, Trump's defense says, well, the government had an opportunity to go get affidavits from Milley and Raffensperger and Barr. They could go get affidavits from them. Well, why should they have to? Well, all those men have publicly criticized Trump, so he can give it as good as the get. So if they criticize him, he can criticize them back. He says, really? Trump suggested that Milley should be eliminated? And Lauro says, well, Milley was terrible. And he did this, and Milley did this, and Milley did this. And so Trump had reason to criticize him. And the judge says, punishable by death? Well, what Milley did was the sort of conduct by the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff going around civilian leadership and speaking to China. Well, why is it appropriate to suggest the appropriate punishment is death, writing in all caps, death? Doesn't that go too far? Trump's defense says, well, it's still true that the death penalty for treason is available. If you commit treason, the penalty is death. He went behind Trump's back, talked to China. So it's factually true, Judge. It's not inciting anything. And she says, well, that's right up there with no one rid me of this meddlesome priest. Millions of followers, and so someone may have acted on it. Lauro says, you hit the nail on the head, Judge. Exactly right. Someone took a shot at Representative Scalise. Are we going to say that political figures can't give speeches? We're in the zone of clear. The First Amendment political speech, clear First Amendment political speech, even though there's criminal prosecutions going on. Under the Brandenburg standard, none of what Trump said incites anything. Molly stands up with her highlighters twirling around, says, Your Honor, we both know about the post-Milley. We know it was a threat. It was a threat to Milley and to all witnesses. It was a threat. It says, if you come after the defendant, Trump's going to come after you. And Molly starts defending Milley's actions. She's like, Mark Milley's an American hero, okay? He stood up for American values when Donald Trump was screaming around, attacking the Capitol and breaking clavicles all over the Secret Service cars. Judge cuts her off. Molly, calm down here. I agree with you, but calm down. All right, we're not talking about Mark Milley and how much you love him. Relax. Says, okay, what response here, Molly, to L's criticism? What about respond to them that you didn't provide affidavits? You could have gone and just gotten statements from them. And she says, well, of course, prejudice is speculative. It may be chilled in some ways that we don't know about. But the post about Raffensperger also misstated what Raffensperger said. And it was about the exact topic that Raffensperger was supposed to testify about. Says, the judge speaking, because it concerns the subject matter of the testimony, that testimony should happen in the courtroom, but not in public. And says Trump is not campaigning against Barr or Raffensperger or General Milley. So defense, why should he be making statements about them at all? Why should Trump be commenting about Milley or Barr or Raffensperger? All three major political figures that are going to be the subject of the 2024 election. That's why. He doesn't get to respond to every statement about him by a witness, says the judge. So they all get to talk and attack him, but he can't attack them back. Insane. Lauro says, Your Honor, with respect to Bill Barr, Trump is entitled to describe what he'd like in an attorney general. He can compare what Bill Barr did with an attorney general and like what he'd like them to do. And judge says, well, no one has said that he can't campaign or respond to criticism. What we're talking about is the language he's using. And he can't use words that can be interpreted as threats or attempts to intimidate. And Lauro says, oh my gosh, Judge, it is obvious that none of these are threats. He's already not said anything that's a threat. And she says, well, I don't think that's that obvious, John. And she says, well, okay, so President Trump uses forceful language. I got that. But that's what he's done since 2015. He's entitled to say things that are critical of other people and other officials in the political sphere. If anything, this district is biased against Trump as a result of the J6 hearings. And so we're going to be litigating ad infinitum all these issues instead of this case. All right, we've got a trial coming up, and you've already given us like 12 Washington monuments full of reading. And so instead of these angels on a pin discussion, here's one simple solution. Let's have this trial after the election and just solve this problem. The judge, we're obviously not doing that. I screamed at you about this earlier. When Trump has singled out certain people in the past, hasn't that led to them being threatened and harassed, the judge says? And he says, well, that's totally irrelevant. It doesn't matter if other people have gotten threatened and harassed in the past. It's irrelevant. But these people, says the judge, were just doing their jobs. Several people who filed affidavits said statements threatening them had increased precipitously. And those people are public officials, election poll workers, says the judge. Look, no suggestion here that Trump has ever done anything that amounts to a threat or incitement. You guys aren't even making that argument on your own. People just can't control what other people are going to do. Otherwise, the First Amendment will be excised out of the Constitution. If we're all responsible for everybody else's actions based on some loose connection to something we say, nobody can say anything, right? We're all going to be like liable for everything. So we have to tolerate a bit, they say, of colorful, vituperative speech. And the judge says, we have to tolerate suggestions of violence. Is that what you're saying? Molly stands up again with her highlighters. Your Honor, Mr. Lauro is saying that his client is above the law. He can say whatever he wants about this case. The statements about Milley, about Barr, about Raffensperger. We're all about this case. He's not campaigning. He's trying to pollute the jury pool, and the court has an obligation to stop it. Judge says, well, let me think about this. John, for the defense, I have a couple hypotheticals for you. Here's a question. What happens if somebody says this? Bill Barr should be executed for his treasonous acts. Is that lawful under the conditions of release and permissible? John says, Your Honor, look, I'd advise anyone to not make a statement like that. Why? Well, I personally, as an officer of the court, but why? She says. Well, I don't personally think statements like that need to be made in the context of a court proceeding. Judge says, well, I have another hypo. What if this statement comes out, says, quote, I hope Bill Barr stays loyal to me, or he won't have a place in my next administration. Would that be permissible? Or would that be an attempt to influence the testimony? John says, well, that's another hypothetical here. She's not giving many of these to the government. Says here it's a political statement because it's about trying to get his support in the campaign. So that's fair too. How about a next one? Bill Barr's a smart guy, but better learn to keep his mouth shut. Well, she says it depends on the context, Your Honor. If it's related to him, Barr arguing Trump and calling him out, that's a fair comment. But if it was the day before trial and Bill Barr is scheduled to be a witness on day 2 of trial, that's a different hypothetical, Judge. She says, well, how about this one? And it's like a friggin' it's like a board game or something. Bill Barr is a slimy liar and can't be trusted. Is that permissible? Defense says, I'm not going to say truth is a defense. Oh, that's a zinger right there. Oh, man. Okay, so just to break that down, I wonder how that went over in court. Oh, I love it. So the judge says, hey, Bill Barr's a slimy lawyer and can't be trusted. So I'm not going to say truth is a defense, right? Well, it's true. And truth is a defense. But President Trump is allowed to comment on Barr's activity as AG. Bill Barr's a tough guy, Judge, okay? He can handle it. Says, Your Honor, look, I know you're protecting these people, okay? But these are tough-edged political people, okay? Bill Barr, Mike Pence, Milley, Raffensperger. They used to rough and tumble. They're used to this. They signed up for it. They're all monetizing their relationship, right? They're going to write books about Trump attacking me. Ah! Do you think anything Trump said prevented them from writing their books? No. If Your Honor wants to have me show President Trump what your expectations are, I'm happy to show him. But Molly says, I'm going to run through your examples, Your Honor. Ask me the questions. Again, she's the hall monitor, okay? She stands up, and you remember her from grade school, like 4th grade. You remember her. Oh, gosh. Says here, about Barr being executed. The defendant should definitely not be able to do that. It is definitely intimidating and threatening toward a known witness, and it could chill testimony and those of others watching. I hope he stays loyal. That's also intimidating. It impinges upon the content of the testimony. And a smart guy, but needs to keep it, also intimidating. And slimy lawyer, also, it goes to the credibility. And all these statements involve the details of testimony. And so Mr. Lauro wants you to just tell him, and he related it to Trump so it won't be enforceable. But we need an enforceable order to stop this. And says, okay, well, listen, Molly, tell me about your universe of prospective witnesses. How many other witnesses are out there that you say are going to be possibly in this case that Trump can't comment about? She says, well, God, there's going to be a lot. We have like 12 Washington monuments of copy paper. Says, witnesses whom the defendant Trump has publicly attacked are all identifiable in the indictment. He knows they're witnesses, and in the conditions of release, there's a requirement that he not contact any witnesses based on the discovery that we've provided. Defense says, Your Honor, courts have also recognized that parties to a lawsuit involved in political campaigns are supposed to be treated differently. Courts recognize that in the Ford and Brown case, Bill Barr is not prevented from speaking out. She says, well, Barr's not a criminal defendant. No, but the court will be regulating campaign speech if you say we can't respond to him. And no court has ever done that. This would be the first time in American history, which of course is appropriate because we're breaking glass all over the country right now. You've asked pointed hypotheticals, but it's not a law school question, Your Honor. What if he says something on the campaign? Are we going to be back here for a contempt hearing? We're in here because he keeps calling prosecutors thugs and deranged, says the judge. He's made comments about court staff and about the death penalty for a potential witness. That's why we're here. And he made statements all the way as recently as last night. And the defense says, Your Honor, that's true. Every single thing he said is protected by the First Amendment. Sorry you don't like that. Molly stands up. Your Honor, first of all, she says, the Ford case, court entered what the Sixth Circuit called a broad order, and it did it sua sponte, and it doesn't apply here. And with respect to another case, that's a cautionary tale. The court lifted an order soon thereafter, and the defendant started leaking stuff all over the place. And a new order had to be entered, and so don't follow that case because it turned out bad. The judge says, all right, you guys are giving me a headache, okay? Thank you. I'm going to take a brief recess. She leaves. All rise. Oh, gosh. All right, Judge. Gosh. That was a long hearing. So they're taking a break. Everybody's taking a beverage break. Refreshing the parched mouth, lest our mouths turn into parchment. And the judge is back on the bench. She says, all right. Now, I've been doing a lot of thinking here. And after this hearing concludes, I will issue an order setting forth my decision in greater detail. But here's the gist of it. I've heard all the evidence here today in my courtroom, and I've decided I am going to grant in part and deny in part the motion to restrict out-of-court statements. Explaining her decision, saying, here, Trump has sought to represent that every statement that he's made has been part and parcel of his argument that the administration, the Bidens, are prosecuting his opponent protected by the First Amendment. But the judge says, but there is a right to restrict language that threatens the administration of justice. And so I won't impose limits on statements about Washington, D.C., so we can still call it a crap hole. But I will consider that in jury selection. And I'm not going to restrict statements about Biden or the DOJ, but I will prohibit all parties from making or reposting statements targeting Jack Smith, his staff, my staff, court personnel. Statements targeting family of these people are also prohibited as well. Trump can't call prosecutors deranged or thugs. So we'll continue to do that here for deranged, thuggish Jack Smith. Might put that on a t-shirt. Can't vilify or incite violence against public officials, which was already illegal to incite violence, okay? Already illegal. Vilify? I don't even know what the heck that means, okay? Vilify? Call them thugs? Whatever. So we'll see if she clarifies that in her order. She says, I'm also going to bar statements about witnesses or substance of expected testimony. Okay, so we don't even know what that is. It says there is a real risk that witnesses may be intimidated and other witnesses may be reluctant to go forward. Bar statements about witnesses or the substance of expected testimony, which again, witnesses are probably in the dozens, if not hundreds of prospective potential witnesses. And the substance of what they say could be anything, right? So you saw how the hula hoop went very small. Okay, the order was very narrow, and it just got monstrous huge. All right, so Trump, he can talk about the DOJ, Biden admin. He can't talk about special counsel, very narrow staff, blah, blah, blah. Can't call prosecutors deranged or thugs, very narrow. Can't vilify or incite violence, already illegal to incite violence. But then, boom, all statements, all substance. There's a real risk that somebody may be intimidated. Now, Trump can assert his belief that this prosecution is politically motivated, but he can't launch a smear campaign against the participants in this case. I don't know how she is going to define that. I don't even know. No other criminal defendant can do that, and he can't either. He can't launch a smear campaign, which is really just a political campaign, isn't it? He's just running to say that the DOJ is corrupt and broken, which is what happens every political cycle. Everybody runs and says the government is corrupt and broken. In fact, we're allowed to petition our government for a redress of grievances, which includes calling out their incompetence. Trump is not running a smear campaign. It's a political campaign. If another criminal defendant is running a political campaign, they too can criticize the political institution that is prosecuting them. But Trump can't in this case. If a participant violates this order, I'll entertain motions by the parties, or sua sponte, on my own, the court voluntarily, without anybody prompting the judge, I will consider sanctions, which can include whatever she wants, right? Home detention, turn in his passport, contempt of court, go directly to jail, whatever they want to do. And Trump cannot speak because this is Washington, D.C. This is a corrupt prosecution of a political opponent. Court is adjourned. Boom! Judge enters, exits. So we get the conclusion from Roger Parloff at @rparloff. A great summary. If you want to give him a follow, encourage you to do that. He is reporting over for Lawfare, and they do great work, and we're grateful for the report. But my friends, a very dangerous order and decision from Judge Chutkan. Trump responded to it. We'll cover that next in our next segment, but make sure that you're here joining us as we continue to investigate this and follow this case well into the future. Thank you for subscribing and joining us by clicking the like button, and we'll see you as we carry on. All right. Now, Trump is responding to this, so let's just jump right into it. Donald Trump responds to the gag order issued by Judge Chutkan, which limits his capability to speak about his criminal prosecution as he's in the middle of his political campaign. We've gone through the full order, the full hearing that took place in Judge Chutkan's courtroom. Now let's see what Donald Trump says in response. This came out from his team. Posted October 16th, a statement from Donald Trump, the spokesperson, says, "Today's decision from Judge Chutkan is an absolute abomination and another partisan knife stuck in the heart of our democracy by crooked Joe Biden, who was granted the right to muzzle his political opponent, the leading candidate for the presidency in 2024 and the most popular political leader in America, President Donald J. Trump. President Trump will continue to fight for our Constitution and the American people's right to support him and to keep the country free of the chains of the weaponized and targeted law enforcement." So Trump's people have obviously seen the final order, and so they're writing statements that are in comportment with the order, but we're noticing the language, crooked Joe Biden's back, talking about fighting for our rights to keep our country free from a weaponized law enforcement, not using the word DOJ there. But we'll see what happens. Now, Trump has ultimately responded to this. He was giving a speech and he had some statements to make, which we'll get to. But here is what MSNBC said in reporting about the gag order after they left the courtroom.
Can announce from the bench that she will impose a partial gag order on former President Donald Trump. Specifically, she will prohibit all parties in the case, including Mr. Trump, from making or reposting any statements publicly targeting the special counsel, his staff, the judge's staff, or court personnel, and also will prohibit statements about potential witnesses and the subject of their testimony. So, for example, Mr. Trump will be able to criticize former Vice President Mike Pence, who, after all, he's running for president against in the Republican primary, but he won't be able to talk about Mr. Pence's potential testimony in this election case, in which, of course, Mr. Pence is a key witness. And this came after a 2-hour hearing, Andrea, that really put in on stark display the clash here between the First Amendment and Donald Trump's ability to speak as he's running for president, and a judge's interest in keeping an orderly courtroom, preventing witnesses and participants from being intimidated, and preventing a jury pool from being tainted. And what this judge concluded is that these inflammatory statements that Donald Trump has been repeatedly making, calling the prosecutor deranged, attacking the judge, attacking witnesses, are out of bounds and have the potential to intimidate and even spark violence, threats from the public at large, and that he shouldn't be allowed to make them. Now, what Donald Trump's lawyers say that they will immediately appeal this order, and there's every reason to believe that the Supreme Court will ultimately have to weigh in on this. We're in uncharted territory here with a presidential candidate who has been gagged by a judge.
Yeah, even MSNBC realizes that SCOTUS is probably going to have to take a look at this thing, because we have two major components of American founding concepts coming into ahead. We have free speech versus due process of the law crashing into each other. And we heard MSNBC reporting that Trump's lawyers are going to be appealing this. Trump is confirming the same. Here is what he said during a speech about the gag.
Today, a judge put on a gag order. I'll be the only politician in history that runs with a gag order where I'm not allowed to criticize people. Can you imagine this?
Yeah.
Do you believe this? I'm not allowed to criticize people. So we'll see. We'll appeal it, and we'll see. But it's so unconstitutional. The good thing is we have so much support. It's incredible. And it just makes it even more so.
I think so.
Look, I'm the only guy that ever got indicted. I got indicted more than Alphonse Capone. Did anyone ever hear of Al Capone? If you looked at him the wrong way, he was seriously tough, right? Scarface. They call him Scarface. Had a little scar in there. I'm sure it was a minor accident, but he was Scarface. But Al Capone, if you looked at him in the wrong way, if he didn't like you, you looked at him a little bit askance, he blew your brains out. He was only indicted one time. I've been indicted four times. And in addition, I have these civil trials that are all coming out of the Justice Department. They've weaponized the Justice Department and the FBI. They've weaponized, think of it, the Justice Department. This is like a banana republic, but we're going to be okay. The good news is I'm the only one that's ever been indicted where the numbers went through the roof, because the people understand it. No, it's true. He challenged the election. The election was crooked. They're saying you never challenge an election. You're supposed to believe these people, right? How about the 51 intelligence agents that lied? Turned out they lied. How about the FBI Twitter files? All that stuff. All of the votes, if you look at 2,000 Mules, if you look at that, those are tapes of people stuffing ballot boxes. Those aren't people saying, those are tapes. People don't want to hear it. But no, they put a gag order on me. And I'm not supposed to be talking about things that bad people do. And so we'll be appealing very quickly.
All right, so they'll be appealing, and we'll see where it goes. Now, there were a couple avenues of appeal, and Shipwrecked Crew over on the X had a good post about this that I wanted to share with you. You can give him a follow. He's represented some other January 6 defendants, 22 years as a federal prosecutor, attorney for 25 years, switched over to a defense attorney, represented a bunch of J6 defendants, and of course you can support him. He's got a Give, Send, Go over there as well. And he posted this today. He says, look, this was in response to an update from the judge and the gag order. He says it's quite possible, though not certain, that the gag order will create a vehicle to get the prosecution to SCOTUS on the shadow docket. So the Supreme Court, in other words, would accept this case because they recognized it was such a problem. Says there could be two avenues, both a direct appeal. So in this criminal case, you just appeal it, but also a civil action, which is something I hadn't thought about, which was seeking an injunction of the order based on his constitutional rights being violated, right? So Trump actually filing a civil lawsuit saying my constitutional rights are being violated would likely be a first of its kind action. It would seek an injunction in the district court, which would likely be denied, and then that could be appealed, right? So in criminal courts, as we've talked about here, it's very difficult to appeal in the middle of a criminal case. Okay, when Judge Chutkan, for example, didn't recuse herself, it's hard to appeal that because you'd have to get her to basically certify the appeal and the Court of Appeals to then accept it. And she's not going to do that. Now, after the trial is over, after Trump presumably goes to trial and gets convicted, then he could appeal all of those issues and then reverse that. But the damage is already done at that point. So the idea is we want to go much more quickly. So what Shipwreck Crew is talking about is file a separate action and then appeal that one up. It would be denied, and then you'd appeal that. There's a first case law. He says there is case law that says a defendant in a criminal case can have his First Amendment rights to speak being curtailed, but there's never, ever been a case involving POTUS also being charged with crime. Says, I think the judge might have created an opportunity by saying the quiet part out loud. The judge saying this case would not be subject to the election cycle. Now, we've talked about this many times, okay? And they've said this, that Trump, no one is above the law. No one's above the law. I've never bought that because he was literally the president. And I know it sounds kind of like not fair to say like some human in America is like technically above the law. The president is. That's why everybody wants to be president. Literally has like a super user root power that just is different. So when first of all, that goes to the underlying charges that even make up the cases in the first place. But when she says that that person is in her courtroom and it's like every other defendant and that an election cycle is completely unrelated to her courtroom, like she can just, like an ostrich, just put her head in the sand and just make believe that the outside world is not happening, is lunacy, because we have elections and we have a lot of other case law that overlap with this. And she has said this multiple times, like, I don't care about it. I don't care about the election. Well, I care about the election. I know you care about the election. I know we care about being able to vote for political candidates in America and be able to hear from them about issues that we think impact our lives. Why should some judge in Washington, D.C. and Jack Smith, a special counsel, be the people who can act as gatekeepers for our free speech and our involvement in the American political cycles? We never voted for them to do that. And Trump has more support from the people throughout the country in terms of numbers, in terms of people who want to see this done, than Chutkan's little courtroom. So it's a much bigger fish than they want to admit, but they're going to have to deal with the reality at some point. So here, Shipwreck says, this reflects a conscious decision on her part that the election is part of her decision-making. And says, yes, this is a hypothetical, but the choices here are going to become very clear, and there might be another avenue of attack on that. So Trump could appeal it, Trump could file another lawsuit, and there's a lot of different things that could happen. We'll see where it goes. Marjorie Taylor Green, representative, was there, and she had a statement. She walked out of the courtroom and gave us an update. And she, of course, represents Georgia. She says, today, a Democrat judge issued a gag order, gagging President Trump, destroying the First Amendment. Trump and the judge made her courtroom the ministry of truth. She said the case isn't about the court of public opinion, yet she allows the media to sit in her courtroom, the very people who craft public opinion from the New York Times and elsewhere in their writing stories. She says public opinion matters, and President Trump isn't even able to defend himself. Says the entire operation is run by Joe Biden, his political opponent, and it amounts to nothing more than election interference. This is the weaponized and the weaponization of government. If it can happen to a former president, the question is, who's next? And can I just say, shout out to Marjorie for actually talking about this. I went through a lot of different people's exes today, other representatives and other 2024 candidates, and they're not talking about this because they should be ashamed of themselves. That's why. Because they're happy that Donald Trump can't talk about the election. They don't want him talking about Jack Smith. Every time he talks about Jack Smith and the deranged thug that he is, Trump sends out a new campaign email and makes millions of dollars. So they're thrilled that Trump has a gag order because that just means it's one more tool that he can't use. And so many of them have been quiet. All the people who would like to see Trump shown the door, they all just sat on their hands today. And so shout out to Marjorie and everybody else who's speaking out about this, because it is the First Amendment. And if you can't speak, you basically are not a human, okay? Language is what helps actualize our entire existence. And so when you take away people's speech, you take away their literal humanity. And they're doing that to the president because that's the kind of people they are. They want their side to win, and they want Trump to be removed. Here's Marjorie speaking out about it.
Government against President Trump. What we just witnessed in the courtroom was the judge gave an order gagging President Trump. He's not allowed to talk about the special counsel. He's not allowed to talk about the court. She did say he can talk about Joe Biden and his administration, but yet Joe Biden's administration actually runs the Department of Justice and runs the special counsel. So her orders don't make a lot of sense. The boundaries of disparaging and inflammatory are the standards to be used to judge President Trump's speech. Gagging him and censoring him while he's running for president. He's the top presidential candidate for the Republican Party for 2024. But politics, all of politics is disparaging and inflammatory. That's the nature of politics and campaigns. So the judge has just made her courtroom now the Ministry of Truth, judging President Trump and what he's allowed to say and can't say. The judge was also talking about how this isn't about the court of public opinion, but yet media is allowed to sit in the courtroom, which creates public opinion, what's written in the headlines and the stories that are written. But yet President Trump can't say anything about the courtroom and defend himself. Another problem is that Jack Smith and the special counsel is the weaponized government against President Trump. This is meant to hurt him politically. This is meant to sway public opinion. And public opinion guides how people vote. So public opinion is important. But Jack Smith didn't bring charges against President Trump until he became a candidate for the presidency. And this entire thing is run by Joe Biden, who is his political opponent. So obviously everyone will see this for exactly what it is. It's the weaponized government, which we should never see in the United States of America. Another big problem is President Trump is running for president to stop communism, to stop the Orwellian practices from the Democrat Party, to stop tyranny coming from government, which the people are terrified from, and rightfully so. And freedom of speech is such an important right. And at what point will it stop? Today, the court is weaponized in stopping freedom of speech of a former president who has not been found guilty. He's only been charged, he's been indicted, but yet he's running for president. So who will be next? Whose speech will be silenced next? Everyone. Will the media be next? And then will it be regular people? So the court has made themselves the arbiter of speech. And what we're witnessing is what we should all be completely concerned about. This should not be happening in our country.
It should not. It is a sad state of affairs, but that's what they're doing. They're breaking glass in case of emergency, and they don't really have a lot of concern for what they break in the meantime. And so Trump says, you know what? I'm fighting on. Nobody's going to stop me. I'm willing to go to jail if that's what it takes to save this country. Here he is.
And the way I look against Trump, because that's who they're running against, we really want to run against Trump, but they don't. And the way I look at it, we beat him twice. Now we have to beat him a third time. We beat him. We beat the hell out of him the second time.
FBI, CIA.
Think of it. Think of it. Think of it. We did much better the second time than we did the first. Remember that. And they're getting beaten very badly by me in the polls. They think the only way they can catch me is to stop me from speaking. They want to take away my voice. And a judge gave a gag order today. Did you hear that on speech? Which I believe is totally unconstitutional, what she did. A judge gave a gag order. A judge doesn't like me too much. Her whole life is not liking me. But she gave a gag order. You know what a gag order is? You can't speak badly about your opponent. But this is weaponry all being done because Joe Biden is losing the election and losing very, very badly to all of us in the polls. He's losing badly. But what they don't understand is that I am willing to go to jail if that's what it takes for our country to win and become a democracy again.
He looks and sounds good right there. Sounds good. Right on.
Thank you very much. So true.
Man, even the liberals used to be for free speech. Where's Dennis Kucinich? Where were those liberals who were out there saying, we need free ideas, we need to communicate, let's talk and dialogue? Now they're just censors. They try to shut up their political opponents, censor them, tell them that they're crazy, gaslight them with fake letters from the CIA, have the FBI censor everybody, fake insurrections to set up Trump and the rest of the people who support him. Of course, he is going to continue to fight. And so a couple very good, optimistic clips from him. You know, I got to tell you, it is pretty impressive that no matter what happens, he is constantly just like, whatever, we're just going to keep moving forward. The Trump train has no brakes, my friends, and we'll be here on it. I hope you join us as we go. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Thank you for sharing it with somebody else out there who you think might enjoy the work that we do here, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, and now, my friends, one final segment. Just want to give a quick update on these most recent filings with a little bit of news. Donald Trump and his defense team now demand access to a classified filing that Jack Smith's attorneys sent to the judge and never copied Trump on. It's called an ex-parte filing, and it involves CIPA, the Classified Information Procedures Act, and Trump's defense says, I want to know what was in there. In normal filings, when the government submits something, they notify the defense, but they didn't do it this time, and Trump wants to know more. Before we take a look at the actual filing, I want to introduce you to one of Trump's new lawyers. His name is Emil Bove. You can see he comes from New York. Blanche Law Firm, he entered in his notice of appearance, and that's what it looks like right here. They sent this in to the clerk of the court. They said, hey, Angela, clerk, what's up, Angela? Says, I am now appearing as a new retained lawyer, Emil Bove. And we learned that this guy's kind of a powerhouse, right? Former SDNY, former prosecutor, somebody who's done a lot of criminal cases, now joining the defense. So that's always good news for a defendant to build out their legal team. Now, Trump's team has also filed a notice of compliance with their security procedure protocols, saying, Your Honor, here's our notice of compliance. Pursuant to an earlier court date, Trump's lawyers, John Lauro and Gregory Singer, now submit that we have submitted all of our security clearance documentation. There's this organization called the Litigation Security Group that works with the U.S. Department of Justice, and they're going to be vetting and verifying that these guys have security clearance to take a look at certain documents. They say counsel, Trump's lawyers, are in communication with LSG regarding their applications for their security clearances. They say we further anticipate that we're going to request clearance for an investigator employed by the defense to also assist. So we've got classified documents in this case, and this is the January 6th case with Judge Chutkan. And so Trump is saying we're jumping through your hoops so we can even review the evidence. And now they've submitted another motion. And I want to break down what's going on here because this is a motion for access to a CIPA filing, right? Trump has not seen this document yet. The government submitted this directly to the judge and bypassed Trump's defense. And Trump says, I want to see it. Now, typically, in a certificate of service, they'll copy both sides, right? We see this oftentimes in simple motions, like a motion for a continuance. Both sides know about it. But this involves what they say is sensitive materials that Trump doesn't need to see. Trump says, here's a motion, Your Honor, that has come in, and we want to know more. We're at a critical juncture. The government is asking the court, Judge Chutkan, to endorse the withholding of discovery. Prosecutors are asking the judge to hold discovery away from Trump. And it doesn't matter whether the material is relevant or helpful to Trump. Government wants Trump to not have it regardless. Trump's defense says, Your Honor, in effect, because CIPA creates no new rights, prosecutors filing this motion are seeking permission to withhold Brady material. Okay, Brady material, we all know what that is because that's exculpatory material. The Supreme Court has told us that if the government is in possession of information that might exonerate the defense, they've got an affirmative obligation to give that to the defense because the defense doesn't have that material. They don't have access to the body cams and the blood results and the crime labs and the evidence lockers and all of the things that the cops wrote in their reports. So if the government knows that there's something innocent in their big gobbling up of evidence, they got to give it to the defense. But the government in Jack Smith's case is saying that that Brady material might be CIPA material, classified information that is precluded from the ordinary course of discovery. Okay, I know this is very in the weeds and very multiple layers deep, but it means Trump's not getting the evidence that the government has in their possession due to CIPA classified material garbage. It's outrageous. The motions require the court to stand in the defendant's shoes, Chutkan, and predict defenses that Trump has not yet presented and that he's entitled to develop as the case proceeds to a jury. We've got to protect the defense and give them exculpatory materials when necessary. Now, in contrast, CIPA makes clear that the court may, but need not allow the prosecutors to shield their submissions from Trump. So Trump can't even see what this is going to the judge. Trump says, now, while we acknowledge the court has discretion to allow this, in this crucial setting, like we know you have the right to do this, we respectfully submit that doing so is not necessary. We seek attorneys' eyes only access to the paragraphs and the submissions that are not portion marked as classified and to the office's citations to legal authority, which are not classified. It's outrage. Like Trump can't even see the evidence. Okay, he was the president. He was literally the president. But they can't show him the evidence. So Trump's lawyers have to resort to begging to just take a look at the footnote documents. Can we just see what you cited to? Now, in light of the court's order regarding public access, we recognize that any redacted version of this would be maintained under seal and subject to protective orders. So we're not going to disclose it. We just want to see it, man. They say the court should exercise its discretion here. This case involves materials that are explained in the following way. They say, here, the court has discretion under the law. They say the general presumption is against ex parte proceedings, right? We want both sides to know what's going on. We don't want either side to just go to the judge behind the other side's back. That's the standard, normally. The development of other laws have given the intelligence agencies greater permission to summarize sensitive information. So if a defendant wants info, you don't get it all, but you can get a summary of it. A case involving a clear defense counsel who've already been approved should get access to these things, right? They've already been approved in other circumstances. And they say they're giving us a bunch of law that we'll fast forward through. They say here, now, while we presume that Jack Smith's office has marked its motion with a banner headline talking about its classification status, the office is not an original classification authority. So Jack Smith might have deemed some things as classified, but he doesn't get to do that because he doesn't have permission under the rules. Any classification of the office's submission is a derivative classification. And prosecutorial claims about sensitivity did not change that. That is why citations to legal authorities are not deemed classified, right? So they just want bits and pieces of what's happening here. They say also this is non-classified, and so it's also going to be protected. There's not going to be any subsequent disclosure. In order to obtain relief, they must invoke special privileges, and only upon an invocation of those special privileges should they withhold evidence from Trump. So we respectfully submit that Jack Smith's office should not be permitted to withhold this evidence without granting President Trump access to the non-sensitive portions of its submission. Respectfully signed and submitted by Todd Blanche. Short filing, but very interesting thing happening there. Okay, it's very, very technical filing. They're trying to just get this, basically. Okay, so the prosecutors filed something, and we don't know what's in it. We can't see anything in it, but they're making an argument that some of that is discoverable because it's not classified. So in the government's filing, they probably had entries that look like this, okay, footnotes or citations to other cases. And so they're saying this portion is not classified. So we should be able to see that. And if they can see that, they'll say, oh, the case is about Stevens. Oh, it's about communications between prosecutors and trial judges. And so they'll be able to reverse engineer what is happening and try to fill in the blanks. But it is par for the course, my friends. Jack Smith and his government sending ex parte motions behind Trump's back, trying to keep the documents in there away from the defense. And Trump's people think it might actually have Brady material that is discoverable, but they'll use technicalities to say it's classified, it's protected, Trump doesn't need to see it. We'll see if they get access to the footnotes or to anything else inside as the prosecution continues with Trump's new lawyers and new security privileges. We'll continue to cover, my friends. Thank you for liking this video. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for leaving a comment, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends, we covered some good ground today, and now it's time to hear from you and see what you have to say about all of this. Trump demands access to the classified documents. Also, responding to the gag order, saying we're going to appeal this thing and we're going to fight, baby. And Chutkan ordering the gagging. We went through the full hearing, and there was some incredible testimony there today. But now, it's time to hear from you. And of course, we are going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com here in a minute for our members-only after party. We also do member-only streams in the morning. So if you're looking to get a little bit more extra content, a little more extra community, a little more extra fun, come and join us, watchingthewatchers.locals.com, where we really try to deliver for our membos. And speaking of our membos, we have a bunch of new membos coming in courtesy of Dolphin Fan is the man, bringing in 5 new membos. Thank you, Dolphin. We got Sheep Herd, Magic Stick is here, Mr. Null, Barcaro, and Don D. Coming into our members-only community, courtesy of Dolphin Fan is the man. We've got Poem Paget's here. Says, thank you, RG, for explaining the legalese so wonderfully. Thank you for that, Poem. Been a member for 5 months. That's over halfway to a baby. Woo, woo. We're getting close. Good to see you, Poem. Thank you for the dono. And Pete W's here says 100% election interference. I totally agree. Come on, 4 indictments, and they're all going to crest right around the same time as the election. I mean, Chutkan's trial is the day before Super Tuesday, the Monday before. Give me a break. All right, thank you, Pete. Very nice dono. Hey, over on Rumble, we got CF Rob is in the house. Says, prohibited from causing surrogates to make such statements on his behalf. That can be said that we are all his surrogates. Anyone who says anything can be accused of being Trump's surrogates and report. I think that's true. I mean, if you wanted to be a government prosecutor, you could certainly make that claim. I would say that Trump is not causing me to call Jack Smith a deranged thug. Okay, I'm doing that on my own. So Trump is exonerated from that criminality. And hopefully I still have free speech to call Jack Smith a deranged thug until he prosecutes me or us for Lord knows what. Thank you, Rob. Good to see you on Rumble. Says basically, swat Trump by any person's comments, and so it silences us, like Dems were doing, calling 911 saying they heard boom booms and that there were kids at the address. Yeah, swatting people. Yeah, terrible thing to do. People have gotten killed that way. Also highly illegal. So yeah, they're trying to take Trump out, and they want to make him vicariously liable for anything else that happens, including an insurrection that they set up. S. McGee's over here says, yes, Trump needs to drop some truth bombs. Trump needs to drop some truth bombs. We might get them. And then the next question is, what is the judge going to do about it? Is she going to hold him in contempt and bring him into prison? What's up, Chase Junkie? Became a supporter over on YouTube. Welcome aboard, Chase Junkie. Hey, YouTube friends, make sure you grab the Telegram link. That's where the after party is, all right? So grab the Telegram link. It's in the YouTube community tab section. Scroll down. You'll see it down there. We've got more membos coming in. What's up? Peng1 is in the house. Bringing in Laura. Bringing in Holy F. We've got Samantha R. Darren Mac M is here. And Eric with a K. All joining us courtesy of Peng1. Thank you, Peng, for bringing in 5 new membos into our amazing community and for being a member yourself. I appreciate that. We got Ray Ronk says, does anyone else recognize that the courtroom script is straight out of the movie Idiocracy? The side that gets the biggest laugh wins the case. It felt like Bizarro land. And I'm sure John Lauro was just melting down, like in the courtroom. Thank you, Ray. Thanks for being a great member. I appreciate your support here. We got The Blind Lawyer Explains. Ooh, I think I know who this is. This is Jameson. Says, hey, family had surgery, so in the hospital now. Surgery's okay. Prayers for the blind lawyer's family. Thanks for keeping us updated, The Blind Lawyer. And I thank you for the dono. And he has a channel on Rumble, The Blind Lawyer Explains. Hey, Tony Hey Muckets has been a member for 6 months. That's 2/3 of the way to a full baby, Tony. Says, can we please change the Trump emoji from a blue tie to a red tie? I am like Matt Gaetz. I will not give in. Oh, Tony. I know what you mean. The tie in the chat. Oh, you know, I still have the emoji list. I was supposed to update the emojis like 6 months ago. Remember when I said I was going to do that? It's still on my list, you know. It's a little overdue by about 6 months or so, but it's on my list. So a red tie for Trump. That's a good thing to do. I'll work on it. The Blind Lawyer is in the house. We got CF Rob says, Christian Fellowship Rob says, are they going to try to go back to his social media posts and videos 10 years ago and say that past posts or videos go against his gag order or her gag order? Don't stop what they've done to us on all the social media. That's a great question. Yeah, that's a great question. I can't wait to see the full order. Hopefully the full order is out. Maybe tomorrow we'll go through it. But yeah, I mean, those posts are still out there. It's like, is he going to leave up those inflammatory truths from many months ago? He should have to take those down, right? According to Molly. Good question, Rob. We got this one from Makina Realty Maui. Woo, Makina Realty Maui. Sounds like a good place to do some realty. Maybe one day I'll need some realtors in Maui one day. Shout out to our friends in Maui. And thank you, Makina Realty, for the nice dono. Hopefully you're busy. Don't Be Hatin' says, gifting to the swear jar to promote free speech for all in the chat. Gifting the swear jar to promote free speech for all in the chat. Thank you for doing that, Don't Be Hatin'. We need it. And Diamond Membo status over on Locals. Woo! Diamond Membo status. Don't be hating, man. Thanks for being a Membo. And thanks for being around for so long. So today was a good day. Yeah, I don't know how much deranged thug Jack Smith costs us in terms of jail time. Deranged thug Jack Smith is what, probably 30 days apiece, 30 days jail. Deranged thug Jack Smith. So I got 90 days right there in the last 60 seconds. 90 days. Whew. All right, well, it's going to be a rough America. Hopefully I'll see some of you guys in there with me. We got Rob's here, says criminal prosecution should be filed by any or several state AGs against Chuck Schumer for his incitement in front of the Supreme Court. I agree with that. I agree. I think that state AGs should be, especially Republicans, if they don't start prosecuting Democrats, they're going to be in big trouble because they're all going to be in jail. We got this one from Insight of the Ages, says clearly a coup classifying exculpatory evidence. Yeah, so Trump can't read the evidence, right? Because there's not enough time. Trump can't comment on the evidence because there's too much harm that might happen. And Trump can't even see the exculpatory materials that might exonerate him because the government said they're classified. First Amendment's here. Hey, Rob, can a civil lawsuit be filed by Trump alongside SCOTUS weighing in, or is it one or the other? Which one would you choose? So, well, I think like we talked about, you may have sent that in before we talked through Shipwreck Crew's statement, but I like his strategy, actually. Filing a civil suit saying that Trump's rights have been violated as a civil rights claim, and then take that one up, appeal that one. So so Trump could have multiple lawsuits going on simultaneously while his criminal cases are happening in parallel. So he could file multiple lawsuits. You know, you could also have a situation like, remember when the state AGs got together and they filed a direct petition to the United States Supreme Court? And I think the Supreme Court ultimately rejected that, but Ted Cruz was going to go argue it and all that stuff. Like, you could have like a major one-off like that as well. But I think I like the idea of a civil lawsuit. It's just something to prompt SCOTUS to get involved. I think that ultimately once SCOTUS gets involved, they'll probably bundle it all up and solve it. But it's how do you get their attention first? And I like Shipwreck's crew idea. I don't think that the criminal avenue is going to work, honestly. So they have to trigger it some other way. And I like his idea of the civil suit. This old guy's in the house. What's up? From Local says, when Trump is reelected, his first executive order should be to move Judge Chutkan's office to stall 3 in the basement men's room right next to door 2 to Jack Smith's office in stall 2. Yeah, put them right there in the toilets so they can do their work there. They can do their legal work together from, well, you know, I think they're different genders, so it'd have to be a gender-neutral bathroom, but I get the point of it. Good to see you, this old guy. Linda Hinojosa became a supporter over on the YouTubes. Thank you, Linda, for becoming a member and joining us. And we'll see you hopefully in the after party on Telegram and in the members only stream in the morning. Knox Bierman is here. What's up, Knox? Another attorney in the house says, good to see you, Robert. Thank you for breaking it down, as always. And good to see you, Knox. Hopefully you're having a beautiful day out there, crushing it in the courtrooms. We've got Horatio's here, says, contribution to my dear friend, who I think is an animal, according to the spelling of this deer. So if I see your dear friend, I'll make sure to pass it along. But we'll make sure we go out and what a deer's like. Carrots and is that what you feed the reindeer? Did regular deer eat the same thing that reindeers do? I don't know. All right. Thank you, Horatio. I know you're joking, my friend. Thank you for the nice dono. And I appreciate you for supporting us. But that, my friends, is it for the donos. Thank you so much for sending those in. Very, very grateful to all of those. Let's say hello to our friends on the X platform. And by the way, we're posting a bunch more stuff on X. So you'll find our various segments over there that look like this now. So our various segments are being posted. We got a 20-minute segment over on X. How cool is this? A 22-minute segment here on X. A 49-minute segment on X, baby. So that's pretty cool. So I appreciate you going over there and joining us and retweeting some of that stuff if you're interested in sharing the work that we do. Let's see who we've got on the X. And we got some good comments in here. Boom, we got Danny McWilliams says, please tell me this was a joke. If not, we're all screwed. No, fortunately, this is real life, my friend. Fred says, we do not have free speech. We do not have law and order. We do not have a fair justice system. We do not have a Second Amendment. We will soon not have a Second Amendment. They think a Republican will never win again, and they probably won't the way that their elections are run. Danny says, so if Trump says the gag order is BS, he can go to jail? Yeah. Well, the judge can do whatever she wants, really. Feline says, I knew today, if there's a violation, put him in jail, you know, other release conditions, revoke his release conditions. It's a problem. And we speculated this was going to happen many months ago, right? And it's just going to continue to escalate. Feline says, I knew today's segment was going to infuriate me. I feel sick at this ruling, so the standard is set. What's to stop them from doing that to the ordinary citizens when they don't like what they have to say? Where does it stop? If this goes unchecked, soon we will be the CCP. I agree. I get so irritated when people treat free speech so poorly. I think it is such a critical component of humanity, right? It is built into our existence, and we have human beings, so-called, who want to try to take it away from us. It's like living in the Stone Age. George is here, says Elon was watching. Oh my gosh, Elon was here. 17 people were here. I knew Elon was going to come by eventually. Thanks, Elon. Sorry we missed you. Always drops off at the end. Great job as usual, Rob. Thanks, George. And cheers from the Rainbow State. Amazing. Good to see you, George. Charlene says, great show. Thanks, Charlene. Moonchild says, of course she would. She's as biased as they come. How much are they paying her? And then we've got Silicon Valley Reject, which looks like Joe Biden in a very strange uniform, and some other good comments. Troublemaker Jonah says, yep, Jack Smith is a deranged thug. It's true. It's true. Absolutely true. I think it's, 100%. All right, so my friends, we're at 19 viewers. I think Elon's back. What's up, Elon? Hey. All right, so shout out to our friends on the X. We're trying to post some more stuff over there since our video posts are now working. And we also have a Watching the Watchers community there as well. And let's see what this looks like. Ooh, yeah, baby. Okay, we're getting up 439 members, and our short form videos are going to be posted here. All right, so our short form videos should be coming out soon. And we're playing around with the format. Okay, so yeah, we're playing around with the format also. So now I'm on the bottom and the text is on the top, so it looks a little bit less weird when we post the short forms. So anyways, so we're playing around on Twitter. Come and join us and say hello to your friends and other watchers on the X. But my friends, that is it for us on the day. We had a couple final comments come in before we wrap it up. What's up, Linda Hinojosa? What's up, Linda? Thank you for this one. It says thank you and God bless you. And God bless you back, Linda. Thanks for your donos today. Thanks for being here. I know you just became a member too, and we're grateful for you. We got this one from Crash to Contrary on Locals. Says, in the hunt for Red October, the quote is, the hard part of playing chicken is knowing when to flinch. Both parties, Chutney and the Trump, have a legacy in the public realm. History will judge, pun intended, both. Who flinches first? Ooh, that's a good comment. Yeah. And is Chutkan really going to put Trump in custody? Is she really going to put him in custody in the middle of a campaign? You going to do that, Judge? That's a pretty big move. We'll see. All right, my friends. So that is going to be it for us on the day. Reminder that you can go over to robertgovea.com, sign up for our daily newsletter. We send those out every day after the show. You get the reports delivered directly to your inbox, and that way you don't miss anything. Hey, look, we're already up here. Look at that. Boom, right there. So you can click reports. You can read the reports. If you miss something like this, like let's say you want to say, 14th Amendment stuff, boom. You got the whole article right here. We're working on getting PDFs here. Should happen this week. PDF should be posted as well. If we go through a PDF, it will be updated on the website, robertgovea.com, to check it out. Also, we should be beta testing our merch store this week with locals, hopefully, and our members. So we'll be beta testing that hopefully this week, and then it'll go live. But we appreciate all your support and checking out all the stuff that we do. I also want to thank some very, very special people who contributed over to ericshouse.org, and we had an incredible show of support yesterday. And man, so Zulu made a monster donation, and we want to shout out Zulu. Look at all these comments that came in. Tremendous made a dono. Says, thanks, Rob and Mama Govea, for the work that you do. What an amazing way to honor the blessing. And my mom's out here responding to everybody. Love you, Mama. Doing good. Greg Eckerman got some serious donos. Let's see who else is in the house. Tremendous. Kathleen Ricard. Zach got a dono for sliding those Rubos salts my way. Ooh, the Rubos salts went out yesterday. We got a donation from PK, the Chappelle family. Words Mean Things. Randy McGee made a nice dono. Words Mean Things is over on our locals. Says, I've been helping someone at work who's going through a very difficult time. I feel so privileged that she would trust me with her pain. At the same time, knowing this event was coming up, I thought about some things. There's just so much pain and so few people who know how to help others through it, especially people who are accessible. At the same time, however, helping others through their pain takes a toll. It takes incredibly strong and dedicated people to help a lot of other people. I'm so glad there's a place like Eric's House for people who have gone through a tragic loss. Marianne, you have taken your pain and heartache, that's my mama, and turned it into such a redemptive and powerful thing. Nothing will replace your loss, but the difference you and your team have made and are continuing to make is incalculable. Thank you to all at Eric's House who are dedicated to this mission. May your tribe increase. Great comment from Words Mean Things over at Eric's House. Kimmy, we got Tweaks in the house. What's up, Tweak? Making donos to Mama Govea. Tweaks over on our locals community as well, and making nice donos in honor of those who need some support. Alex is here. Tweak made other donos. Look, Tweak donated to me. Tweak donated to my dad, Greg. Tweaks donated to everybody in the house. This one was in memory of Robert Heslin. May he rest in peace. Diane William is here. Adam Combs, Dono. And that's my brother, that's my mama, and that's my brother, my friends. And so you can see we had some very, very generous donations come in. And unfortunately, in this world, we lose people. Julie Tran made a donation. Zulu made a dono. There's Zulu. Look at that one. Nice dono from Zulu, our friend who helps mod the fort down for us. Made a nice dono saying someone somewhere needs some help. And that is absolutely true. So thank you for that one, Zulu. And Kimberly Hamilton, John McGarvey. Oh, John, thank you for this one. John mods down the fort for us. Says, hi, sending love as well. Zach Nichols in the house says, show me the Rubos salt, baby. Woo! Tweak made another dono. Another dono from Tweak. Tweak. Look at all these donos from Tweak, man. Tweak, you're out of control. I love it. Hey, Kathy Trout made a dono. God's Garden. Look at all these donos that came in, my friends. So I certainly don't know that I'll get to everybody, and I don't want to miss anybody, but we had such... Jigum. Oh, my goodness. So Jigum's here. Says the world is certainly in need of... Oh, my gosh, Jigum. Look at this generous dono. So generous. I can't even take it. Says the world is certainly in need of hope and healing on just about every front. This is in honor of all the loss that is taking place on both sides of the current Middle East conflict. I wish they had access to Eric's house or an organization like it. The world would be a better place. Thank you for all you do. Oh, and Watching the Watchers is the best show and community out there. You're dang right about that, Jigum, hands down. Shine that big, beautiful spotlight, everyone. Exclamation point from Jigum, making a very generous dono and sharing the Watching the Watchers community with everybody. And this is the crew, man. This is the Watching the Watchers crew out there. There's my mama, fearless leader, fearless paddler, along with the rest of the crew out there. From Jigum, shine that big, beautiful spotlight is the name of our vessel. And look at this kitty. Look at this real good kitty and this real good boy joining us along with the rest of the crew to save America, baby. Let's do it. So thank you for that, Jigum. So amazing. Meme Smith extraordinaire. Just amazing. And hey, yeah, that dono was supposed to go under. Cool. I'm glad we caught that one. Thank you for that one. Amazing. So good. We reached a part of our goal. Greg Eckerman, my dad, got a dono. Kelly Salnow made a dono. Thank you, Kelly. And look at all of these, man. We did a great ceremony. We did a great event yesterday. Donna Newland's here. Says, I love what Eric's house does. When I lost my daughter to drugs last year, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Donna. We're praying for you. Frozen in time. It was a long, hard process. The world needs people like you now more than ever. God bless you all. Thank you so much for sharing that. My mom responded. We're so sorry for your loss, but I'm so grateful you came and joined us at Eric's house. I'm grateful that you got to spend some time with us yesterday. More donos coming in. And so you can see the list just goes on and on, my friends. And I'm so grateful for everybody who sent those in. Kathy Bowman sent another one in. Says, in memory of my father, that we lost to suicide and two of his siblings, dad and his brother, man, and his sister. Oh, man. So sorry to hear about that. Kathy Bowman. You know, and these things often happen in waves. It's like, they're like clusters. So when a family loses someone that they love, everyone else is in pain, you know, and it's like this little domino effect happens. And so, my gosh. Here, John Allen, a.k.a. Hunter Biden's crack dealer, is here. Says, hi, Rob and Mama G. This is my second dono because I donated through the Eric's House main address. Didn't have a way to designate a dono, but thank you for this. Hope you're able to find it. Blessings to you all. John, thank you for both donos, my friends. And I'm glad we got to see this one. Hey, Vientikis made a dono. Says, buy some bacon with this. You know, people in mourning and healing, they need bacon too. It's a nice recovery tool. Melissa D's here. Says, thank you for all that you do. God bless you all. Thank you, Melissa. Rhonda Hensley's in the house. In loving memory of Mario. Looks like a great musician right there. Ryan Berg. Christopher Anderson is here. In loving memory of M.W. Moffett. From Christopher Anderson. Kathy Ann Human is here with a very generous dono, Kathy. My goodness. I'm grateful for your continued work. You have the biggest heart, and it's a blessing. Mama Govea, too. it's all credit to my mama. She is just incredible. And so I matched all of these donos that came in. I'm matching them all, and they're going all over to Eric's house. And so I'm so grateful for all of you who made these donos here. Anonymous says, Rob, my heart goes out to you, your family, and all affected. I have empathy. My mom attempted suicide, and my niece passed, unfortunately, at age 26. Man, we're sorry to hear that. Thank you, Anonymous, for that. C. John Upstate sent in a dono. Cynthia Smith. C. John says, my hope is this will help someone. Cynthia sent in another one. We lost my son-in-law's brother and my dear friend's daughter. Praying for our youth. Charlotte is here. Stooky May says, my quarterly safety bonus arrived this week. Woohoo! I was able to add in a little extra. Thanks for serving those in need. That is from Stooky May over to Eric's house. And so a watcher sent this one in. Lost my spouse in 2020 to pancreatic sepsis and my mom COPD last month. Both deaths were brutal. I know it's hard for people. A watcher, my friend, thank you for the dono. I hope you're finding some support. And if you're not, please connect to Eric's house. Carrie B says, Rob, you not only shine that big, beautiful spotlight, but you and your whole family are beautiful lights for so many in this dark world we are in. And thank you. So, my friends, you can see a lot of love came out to Eric's house. Rosie Posey says, very happy to donate in honor of Eric and the family. May God heal all broken hearts and cover all his everlasting peace. From Rosie Posey. And it was such a beautiful event, my friends. Ryan Olensky made a dono and others. And so the page is still open, and this number includes some so we're over about 33,000, I think, with some outside pledges that are not on this. But it was a great showing. And we've got some 2 weeks remaining. So if you want to go and make a dono, you certainly can. Givebutter.com/Eric's House 2023. And thank you for sending all of that in. It was really a great thing. We had a ton of fun. And thank you for supporting that work. We need it. Zutral says, Rob, thank you for all you do at Eric's house. I dono today and to Eric's house in honor of my youngest brother. I wanted to tell you here as I missed Saturday. I was taking his twin home from the hospital after neck surgery. If anyone prays, please keep his twin in your prayers for his wellness and healing. Thank you. We will do that, Zutral. I'm sorry for your loss, my friend. And I hope you and your family are doing well. And thank you for sending this in and for making the dono. But all right, my friends, now that is going to be it for us on the day. We are going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our members only after party. Flash Rivers over there says, thank you for keeping us in the loop. Protagonist Winston Smith is proud of you along with Donald J. Trump. Remember, Big Brother is watching, so do your best to have a blessed, awesome evening ahead all. From Flash River, very nice dono over on the locals. But okay, my friends, so that is it for us on the day. We are going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Come and join us if you'd like to. We'll be back tomorrow to do this all again, and we'd love to see you here. Let's say hello to our mods. Vientikis Prime in the house, K-Bean, we got Just Cause, Playing Hooky, Ronnie Cole, our friend Zulu, Beyond Geo, Zach Nichols, John Allen's in the house, Janek, Dog Digger, Donut Mind Me, and John McGarvey, all modding down the fort for us, along with Geegum Geegum, Nathan N810, and Sleepy Dog Lee, all meme-smithing the show up for us, and we're grateful to each and every one of them who helps keep this show on the track. But, my friends, that is it for us on the day. We are going to be back here tomorrow to dig into it all again, and it's going to be busy, I have a feeling. And so, we need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.